FEFP for 2021?
No.
Nope.
Do you see the red light?
Is it-
Don't turn off one of the other ones.
It's on. I could hear it.
I could hear it, but I can't hear it on the microphone.
Yeah.
Is that one better? Yeah.
There
Okay.
you go.
It's nicely done.
All right. So,
That's probably the easiest way to talk about the variances with the House and the Senate coming up, is to look at
the comparison of the FEFP sheet, the one you all were referring to with the red coloring, that tells the difference in it. But as far as how it impacts what we are projecting for next year, specifically as it relates to our budget with the current projections of ending in December 31st, that's on the comparative statement of revenues, that summary sheet. So just looking at the comparison of the FAFP school funding for the House and the Senate.
What are we looking at, this sheet?
This sheet, yes, ma'am.
The one that has all the red.
The one that has all the red. In that, you can see that they have increased our FTE. They project, the state as well as we do, that we will be increasing our enrollment. They have us going up about 485 FTE. That's actually going to be a little bit more than that when we finished our projections. It's going to be a little over 500. So it's going to be a little bit more than what they're actually calculating us
Does
on.
that include the increase at charter schools? That's for the whole district?
Yes, ma'am. Yep, that's everything. It also includes the Florida Family Empowerment, which impacted us this year as well. So the FTE is going up, and as you can see, the base student allocation, the House has it going up $50, and then the Senate has it going up $40.17. Interesting to note, very interesting for Superintendent Corcoran, is the DCD in those areas. The DCD in the House actually went down. This year we're at 1.004, and the House has it at 1.0002. So that went down.
Say that again, because you said house twice.
I apologize. This year, we're at 1.004, and then the House has us at 1.0002.
There's an extra zero in there.
Extra zero.
Yeah,
and
there's out one more. So just for notification, for some informational purposes, the next line actually shows the DCD impact, the change in the DCD and its impact. So had the DCD stayed exactly at 1.004, no change, we would have received, with a $50 per student base student allocation increase, an additional $817,150. On the Senate side, the Senate actually increased our DCD from 1.004 to 1.0068. So had they left it the same, we would have received $600,000 less. So we're actually getting a $6.2 million increase for the growth in our FTE plus the increase in the BSA by 4017. So I just want you to understand that's why, because it seems counterintuitive if I receive $50 in the House that I would get more in BSA than I would with a $40.17 increase on the Senate side. But as you can see, the Senate BSA number is actually higher than the House.
Devil's in the details.
So it's all about the change in the calculation of the district cost differential. One's using cost of living, the other is using the wage index. So,
Thank you.
sorry.
And how that ferrets out.
Yes.
So then going on to the next line is the teacher salary increase allocation, which is, in essence, was best and brightest this year. So you can see in the House, it's almost 10 million. And in the Senate, it's almost 8. So that's the variance there. Also to note in legislation that the House is requiring the minimum of $50,000 for the teacher base salary to start. And then the Senate is $47,500.
And that's classroom teachers
Classroom
only.
teachers, yes. Then the safe schools, as you can see, that's just going up a tiny amount compared to the number of FTE that we're growing. Supplemental academic instruction, that also is going up a little bit. The reading allocation in the House is going down, and it's going up a little bit in the Senate. ESE guarantee is going up. The digital classroom allocation, you can see that in the Senate, they gave us roughly the same amount, but in the House it's come out, and from prior year, that has gone down a lot. But we still have those obligations for what that funds as far as digital classroom expenditures. And we have the mental health assistance. We have an increase there. Teacher lead increase there, which is, we do anticipate growing, so we will be adding some teachers. And student transportation is going up, and instructional materials is going down, even though we are growing over 500 students. So that's the breakdown for the total FEFP.
Excuse me, those
ma'am.
FEFP, those increases in transportation and things like that, that all probably is related to the increase in students.
Growth, yes.
Growth.
Yes.
So in the instructional materials, I understand we'll have a new
Yes, ma'am.
calculation and a new
Adoptions.
adoption of books and all of that, and that's interesting.
Yes. So we'll be figuring that out. So then as we go down to the required local effort, you can see that both of those are growing. And again, we are a 90% local and 10% state. And going further down, you can see in this year, we had a proration to our funds. So basically what happened is, as you know, we grew even more than our projection as far as students. The entire state did. When that happens, that means that there was a certain allocation of funds for the state for education, and there were more students than the funding allowed for. So everybody gets prorated. So this year, our proration was over $400,000. So that was something that impacted us as well as our charter schools and the entire state. And then also when you're going down, you can see below that, we had a prior year adjustment, which was good. That added to us for this year. Florida Family Empowerment, that was over $1 million. We had approximately 176 students participate in that this year. So
Is that the one for bullied students, or what is that one?
That's a catch-all.
you know, it's actually there's legislation regarding the how much a family can make, and they are the ones that go to a private school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They've moved some of the bullying into that.
They apply to the state for it, and we had built in for next year's budget in the current legislation. It was like a 0.25% increase they were going to allow, but I heard that there's something that may be even more than that. So. The only thing that is good is that it, as far as a funding situation is, it's an in and an out. So as long as we can, know about it, that we get the funds and they go out, but we certainly don't want to staff our schools in anticipation of these students. And it was largely in kindergarten, which makes sense, and that was across the state. So
Yeah, and when you say, we get credit for it, it's an in and an out, but the in is coming from our local taxpayers.
correct, yes, ma'am. Yeah,
It's very similar to McKay.
yes.
Scholarship, the
Yes.
way it's handled.
And so then McKay also is in there. I don't have the exact number for McKay. I can look that up for you, but I don't know the exact number. And the lottery school recognition, so that is in the House, it's actually lower, but in the Senate, it's a little higher. It's not much of a difference. And class size is going up, as it should, because we're going to have more students. And let's see. So basically, we get down to the required local effort again, and the 0.748 discretionary local effort. Something to note is that the state had us increasing our property taxes by about 5.4%, a little bit more than that. We thought we would come in around 6%. So we built the referendum coming in at a 6% increase for the next year's budget.
Yes, Shirley.
Under state categorical programs, you have listed there the student transportation, instructional materials, and teacher lead program, but they're also up ahead. So, and there's no dollars amount in there. Is that because rather than a categorical, they move them to the FEFP, which again means instead of the state paying for it, our local taxes do?
Yes, ma'am.
That happened during the recession. They moved those 100% state funded to 90-10. Yeah.
So then at the very bottom of the sheet, you can see that the funds per unweighted FTE for this year, because we had the proration, actually we lost $4.47 per student per FTE. And for next year, it's slated to go up $242 in the House and $232 in the Senate. When Superintendent Corcoran was reviewing it, the half of that increase is really is earmarked. It's allocated in the dollars that they're putting for the salaries. So, and then it turned out after that half, $80 of that 120 remaining is really going towards the increase in the FRS. So that leaves a small variance for other personnel and instructional materials and those other things that are also going to be increasing because of growth.
So we've gained, we will be gaining either $35, $40, $50, and FRS is going to take up 70.
Or 80.
80.
80, excuse me, 80. So when the net loss is 40.
From the BSA.
Yeah, from the BSA, we'll be gaining. Yes, right. Yeah. So if there's a 240, and then half of that is 120 is roughly the salary increases, and then 80 off of that. So then that leaves about 40 that's left over for,
For growth.
for everything for growth. Yes.
But it's not a negative number. according
It's not.
to
Well, it's not negative.
Chair last week. This is not a negative number. Why is there a problem?
So I just want to say kudos to everybody, is school board, all of the cost center heads and teachers and staff and everybody, because we've been really working hard. We're a great district, A district, and we've been looking at staffing class size wise, lean, everybody's doing their part. And I have to say that I believe that really contributed to us being prorated of funding, and so we lost funding, had more students, yet we were still staffed adequately in our class size, and things are still, so that was great. So we didn't end up actually having any kind of overall negative.
So that's just the FEFP portion of the budget. You want to go through the rest of the budget?
Sure.
Any questions, Eric?
I think she's doing a wonderful job,
Thank you.
Madam Deputy CFO.
Oh,
Could you explain why the FRS is going up so much? I mean, we've never seen an increase like this. When I look at employee benefits, I mean, they're going from $90 million to $99 million. And part of that is the FRS, but part of it is the new teachers. We're going to have more insurance, more taxes, but a good portion of that is the FRS.
yeah. So this year it's 8.47%, and next year it's 10%. So to your point, when you're looking at it going up for next year, this year, obviously it's based on our fill rate. So, that's the projection that you see. But next year, when we go to budget, we presume that we're having a higher fill rate, and hopefully with a higher teacher salary, though every district will have that. Again, we have to look at budgeting as if there's going to be, more filled positions. So that increases it as well, because we just don't have all of our positions.
But it does include all of the benefits. So it includes the benefit component of the 47.5 or the $50 million base increase in the base salaries, as well as the 18% FRS rate increase in there. There's like a 2%
Jane.
Oh, okay. I thought Mitzi was still talking. Okay. What I was going to say about the FRS is that FRS is being taken largely way above anything that we've ever found in the House or Senate in years past.
Right.
We might have something like 75 million, but never 223. And it is self-sufficient to about, 87%?
Correct.
And they want to take it much higher than that. Normally, that would have been over maybe several years. So that is the big deal for us, is that this is such a large amount to handle. Margaret Good attempted on the floor of the House to get some traction with this, but without success. But it's something that really is a non-starter in the political world of Tallahassee right now. So I don't know that anything will change about that, but it's of great concern to all
My
of us.
understanding it's already moved through, but
Well, the bill itself has already passed, yes,
Right.
both House and Senate,
Right.
and is awaiting what they will do with it. But it's amazing how
it's the unfunded actuarial liability that they're trying
That's
to make
exactly
up.
right.
They've been doing that. They've been funding the unfunded component. There's been two components of the FRS now for a number of years, since the recession and since they were not getting the amount of investment income that they believed they would normally have estimated to get. So that's been around for, I'd say, 8 years or more. But this year, which I was kind of surprised at because I thought it was kind of a banner year for investment income. So I thought it was a little odd that this is the one year where they're deciding to increase it by 18%. But, I mean, if that's what the actuaries believe it should be, I suppose.
But there's not one district in the state other than Jefferson County, I think, in Marion, that comes out ahead on this
Yeah,
in the runs that I have seen. So
correct.
Eric?
Yeah, so I want to piggyback what you were saying. Obviously we can't do anything about it, but it does seem odd that you had a banner year and that would close the gap of the unfunded mandate. Obviously we can't do anything about that, but what we can do about, and what is concerning mine is, we do have investments in the SBA, and my concern is this entity not giving good returns? I mean, if they're the only place in the free world who do not experience good financial returns, is this, I would like to get a report of what our money in the SBA, what kind of rate of returns we got last
SBA's
year.
rate of return is higher than any other fixed income account out there. So there's, a million different money market trust funds available.
But those two things don't jive.
I agree with you 100%. SBA has been giving greater returns than the others. So I am.
But if they're giving greater returns, then you would think that they would catch up the underfunded mandate at a greater rate, and so therefore they would lower the number, not increase.
Agree 100%.
So I mean, it's a numbers game. It's pure math, which I love.
Correct.
So I mean, are you?
I'm guessing they're saying because.
But you're positive that the SBA is getting the rate of return that you're saying?
I mean, because we were trying to figure out.
Because I'm doing all the last year that the life
And the
expectancy rose that great.
I'm just saying, you've got baby boomers retiring, so you have more people in the FRS probably than ever before because you've had more people leaving the workforce and people are living longer. That's the only thing.
But that's a gradual trend that's been occurring over time.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think they've just not over time increased the rates. They've increased the rates like 2%, maybe 4% year over year. And now it's 18. So it would have been nicer if it were just gradual all along. But
Could you just double check to make sure our rate of return for the SBA
I will.
is? Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Shirley?
Yeah, and they used to have, in order for you to get vested, for an elected official to get vested, you had to be in for, I think it was 8 or 10 years, and now I think they've lowered it to 2. It was 8?
it was 6.
No, I think they lowered it. They lowered it.
6.
But when they're telling us the amount that goes to the new teachers, we have to take all of the FRS and the benefits out of those dollars that they're giving us, correct?
Yeah.
So
the 9.9 on the House and the 7 is inclusive of the benefit.
it's inclusive of the benefits. And I think it's also interesting to note that the FRS really is only going to affect this public school boards. I mean, because most of the charter schools aren't into the FRS, and of course the private schools aren't either. And, you know, is this just another way to stab us in the back when, you know, so that when they can be telling the public they're giving us so much more money, and then when we're saying, well, no, we didn't get more money, they can just say, oh, there they go again. You know, I just think it's a disagreement that they might be setting up. I don't know.
What I've
I just
heard,
be conspiracy theorist over here.
what I've heard is that less people are going into FRS and more are going into the market, and that has eroded the base of FRS, which has caused the rates to go up.
Well, yeah, that was something that they talked about too. When we're taking them out of new employees into the FRS.
Well, and that is true. The default now is the investment plan. It used to always be the pension plan. But now if you do not make it an active election into the pension, you default into, and that becomes your first election, is into the investment plan.
Right.
So less members.
But you never have unfunded mandate when everybody's in the investment plan.
That's a true statement.
So the unfunded mandate issue doesn't come into play. So the life expectancy doesn't come into play. All those other
they're
variables.
all in the investment account.
If they're all in the investment account,
I agree with you 100%.
The more people who go in the investment account, the better the core, the solvency of the institution, not the other way around.
No, because
Yeah.
there's
many
people in the FRS now, and you have to pay for them. And what's happening is the baby boomers are retiring, so you've got a lot retiring. But if you get more people coming out of it, because part of how you pay for your retirement plan is the employees paying into it. So if you still have this group, I mean, 50 years down the line, yeah, you're right. But in the near future, you've got less people paying into the people who are already there.
But and also, FRS isn't just for school boards. It's for pretty much all state workers, most cities, all counties, right?
Not every city.
Right, as I said, most.
But in most, I think all counties.
Yeah,
I think counties are compulsory and school boards are compulsory.
right. I mean, I would say the majority of taking out the federal government, most governmental officials in the state of Florida are participate in the FRS.
Right. I think in Sarasota County, only the city of Sarasota, governmental-wise, is not a part of it.
Okay? Any other questions on this?
Okay, so
Go along.
I'm going to go ahead.
So looking at the comparative statement of revenues, appropriations, and fund balance, we can go over the way we are projecting to end as of December 31st. The information in this is inclusive of the raises that were negotiated, including the $12 an hour minimum and the aid changes. So everything has been included. So as far as starting from the top of the projected actual for 1920, something that has changed is in our federal direct, we are anticipating about $500,000 less in Medicaid funding. That's due to ACA, the Agency for Healthcare Administration, conducting audits and making some changes or determinations about what expenses are claimable. And that will flow into the next year as well.
Statewide impact.
Yes, statewide impact, yes. We already talked about the way things are coming in for the FEFP, state and local. The Family Empowerment Scholarship, about $1 million was taken out. And as far as the FTE, we had an increase of FTE, but we had an overall proration. And again, that resulted in a $4.47 decrease per FTE. So going down to the expenditure portion, the appropriations, the salaries that you see there, again, those include all of the negotiated estimated raises. And the benefits are calculated as well. There's nothing really changing there. The things are really trending as we had anticipated. Just as a note, if before the negotiations had happened, the projection of the deficiency was just under 500,000. So we got really close to break even. So now you can see with those raises in there that we anticipate being 13 million deficit. But still, if you go to the very bottom, you can see that our fund balance, unassigned fund balance, is still estimated to be 9.34% for the old way of calculating it, and 11.45% of the state way of calculating it. So that's how this is looking for this year. And going on into level funding, as a summary, again, the Medicaid is staying decreased. This is keeping the state and local as if things hadn't changed for us. So you can see, as far as salaries, that's what would be as if we just, move forward with the 0.5% increase.
But don't you have in here that what they're expecting us to give the teachers?
Yeah.
I mean, with the new money?
Oh, yes, I'm just talking about level if there had been no changes.
All right, thank you.
Just as a point for when you, negotiated, you can see that down at the bottom, it came to 7.45%.
I had mentioned when we were first discussing the raises that if nothing else changed, but we got a 6% increase in our discretionary, that we would come in at 7.5% at our old way. So this is based on the 5-point-something% that the state's done. So as you can see, we're close to the 7.5% that I had mentioned, if there had been no changes.
You can always just change definition. We get below, we just change the definition.
Well, they're both on there. They're both on there, and it's already changed. So,
There's no games. You can see them both.
so go ahead.
Got it.
They're both on there.
So that's how we would have or estimated to end with level funding. And then the House and the Senate are on there. So we've already talked about the revenues for each of those. And in the salaries portion, as you know, that's where we added in the teacher salary inclusive of the benefits. So the dollar amount there is just the allocation that we were given for each of, whether it was in the House of the almost 10 million and in the Senate for the almost 8 million. So you can see, and keeping everything else status quo with the exception of we added, and we're just estimating what we're adding right now. We added 8 teachers. We're still moving forward with all of our staffing allocations. So there's going to be, waivers and things such as that. Also, looking at the class size still, because as we continue to review that and see how we can schedule and get the most of our allocation for that. And so that's still something that's being reviewed at all levels, is the class size. So with that being said, the real changes are into the salaries and the benefits. Something to note is charters. Charters are anticipated to grow based upon meetings we've had with them, but also there's going to be some changes as far as different schools making changes to their enrollment, and as far as like middle schools and things like that.
Eric?
This is more of a procedural thing. So when it says final budget, I assume this means the final budget that was voted on in September without any changes. Why don't we, for example, when we give pay raises to the teachers, why don't we do a budget amendment to amend the budget so that the final budget is really things that the board already knows and is taking, has taken action on, and so that the final budget should be what's in
It should say
September.
adopted budget
Right.
instead of final
Right.
budget. So I think it's just because normally by the end it does say final.
But in all fairness to staff, if the board decides we're going to change something, so if the board says we're going to increase travel or whatever, and we make that decision after the final budget is adopted, I think you should change this column, because it's not fair to the staff to hold you guys accountable to something if the board later on changes something. So
We're in the process of doing the budget.
does that make sense?
Yeah. We got the third calculation in January, and then we were hoping to settle on the contracts, which we have, and you'll be voting on that today. And as soon as that's finalized, then we'll finish the budget amendments, and they'll be on your next board.
Okay, and so then those, next time we saw this, the analysis, the final budget would incorporate those budget amendments.
So it would look a little more like your projected column.
Correct. Okay, just wanted to make sure of that.
Yeah. No, that's correct.
So the charters, like I said, they are going to be, there's going to be some changes. So we'll have to see, we've been in close contact with our choice office and the charters and how that's going to impact our middle schools, because they will be receiving some more students if those schools make those changes. And something that has come out for expenditures for next year, which is just an in and an out, is the rekeying. That was an initiative this year, so that is something that you won't see. You already know about the FRS increase, and so that's basically, there's not a lot of changes. It's just status quo at this point in time.
Just for some growth.
Just for some growth, correct.
And so I just wanted, so I don't know if she's going to speak on it, but, we've been actively working on the zero-based budgeting effort with our departments. And so those changes will get incorporated in here also once they're completed. So normally, I think in the past, what we've done is in March, we bring you pretty much a completed budget. It has every school, every department, and then we ask your permission to release it to schools, which seems kind of counterintuitive to me. Shouldn't the schools and the departments get their budgets first, work on them, and then bring them back to us for us to review? So that's the process I'd like to incorporate for this year. So just so if we can kind of get consensus of the board, we don't need to take it, obviously we don't vote, but it's we've been working with the departments already on the zero-based piece, but we would like to work with the schools and get them their staffing allocations out sooner rather than later. Our goal is to try to ramp up the entire process so that we can get to market before colleges end. Right now, we don't post jobs until the end of May. Kids have been out of school for almost a month. Actively seeking a job, and we're kind of missing the mark. So I'd like us to get out to market by the end of April so that we can try to attract our students as soon as possible. So I want to move up our entire process by about a month. And so we've been working through that. There's a budget calendar, I think, that Krista was going to review with you guys on it. And it kind of shows where by the end of April, we'd like to have everything. We want to work with the schools, get them their budgets by about March 9th, give them, normally they only get like a week. We'd like to give them, because spring break falls in there, until the end of the month. So they have until about the end of March. And then budget and HR will kind of turn it and burn it. And then we'll go through the new staffing process, which is a little different based on contract language changes, and then get our jobs posted hopefully by the end of April.
I think it makes sense. Is everybody in agreement with that? Shake your head.
Logic makes sense?
I love it.
Okay, so that's what we're going to try to do
At
this
least
year.
have 4-1. I didn't see one head shake, but
I said yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
March. It's the third week in March.
The third week in March is spring break.
Yes.
Do we go to like career fairs, right? before
We do. Oh, yes. No, and we're out actively recruiting. We're issuing binders.
Indicating positions for the,
Right. So yeah, we are definitely. We don't believe we will ever have more teachers than positions available currently.
The way you said it,
And then we're having
Yeah.
a meeting on the 24th instead of the 17th.
Yeah.
I had that down, but I didn't have.
trying to move people while they're here for spring.
okay, so do you want to go through the budget
Correct.
calendar? Or are we okay with it?
If you want to, we can. Basically, Mitzi touched on it, so we're just going to be, like I said, we're putting together the staffing information right now based upon the enrollment meetings that we had with the schools and looking at class size. So things should be distributed by March 9th, and then they'll go through it and determine whether or not they're going to add positions with wavering things or what they would like to do. And then when we get them back, like Mitzi said, this will be the first time since I've been in this role that we're going to actually be posting the vacancies April 15th. So it's a lot earlier. So hopefully that will help us. So if you guys are good with that, we'll just continue to move forward. We do want to let you guys see firsthand your zero-based budgeting, since you guys have your own budget. What we've been doing with every department, we've started a few months ago, and so we've been going through and going over the last 3 years plus the current year of your expenditures and reviewing them, and then sit down with cost center heads and the budget accountants are going through, and everybody's starting from the bottom up. And it's really been a great exercise. And I got to say, everybody in the cost centers are just doing a great job of reviewing things. Sheena Runyons is your budget accountant.
Thank you.
So since this is the, only opportunity you all get to sit together and discuss your budget, we thought, well, this would be a good exercise. And, your budget's not
Thank you.
Too complex?
It's not like transportation or food service or facilities, but it's still encompasses different items.
I just want to say I'm so excited that we're finally doing this. I'm just so very, very, very excited and appreciative. Not for just the school board, I mean the whole.
Right.
These are our strategic goals. So
Thank you.
basically, every expenditure we have should be aligned to a goal.
It's okay.
Thank you very much.
So these were items that were around before. We don't have a real strategic plan in the district. Again, we'd like to get to the point where we have one. But I think at this particular juncture, we should wait until there's a permanent superintendent in place to work through that.
Right.
I don't think anything on here is very controversial. They're all things we all agree to, that are important. But so we just try to work, and we'd like to eventually get to the point where we are aligning every dollar we are planning on spending to a goal. Actually, when I worked at Sarasota County government, you couldn't request a dollar if it didn't align to an objective and a goal. So, and that, is a good way to budget. So, needless to say, we can start going through this particular process here. So in your budget details report that you have, the first line item is overtime. As you know, Kathy has to work additional hours to attend your school board meetings in the evening and other items. So historically, you'll see what the actuals were in 18, 19, what your 2020 budget is, and what you spent to date. So you will eventually get to the point where you'll be over budget on this line item here relatively soon. So in 2021, it's listed as 3,500. So you can adjust that up or down in what you believe you will actually spend. So if you're looking at what you've spent historically, you can probably go down a little bit.
Is there an expectation that during the superintendent search that she's going to be going out to any of those meetings?
Probably.
Yes.
I would
That are nights and
need
weekends?
to be spending some more time.
I don't know. Well, because I'm looking
I think
at...
that's very
If
reasonable.
nothing else, it would be, assisting Dr. Vogel or myself in trying to help get meetings arranged with community forums or whatever it could be.
I'm just thinking what would be different,
agree.
possibly be different.
Well, in addition, we have the audit committee. So, and I think that you're helping facilitate some of the coordination there as well. So
Right.
I don't think lowering it would necessarily make sense given the
I'm surprised about the jumps
Variance.
in some of these. You would think it would be more.
professional services. I'm curious. Well, let's so
It
overtime,
just
I
goes
see.
up and down, and I don't understand why. There's that 332. Is that 1,000 or million? What is that?
We're not there yet.
332,000.
That-
All
that's-
we're not
that's for
there
the
yet.
referendum.
I'll wait till we get there.
Think about referendum.
That was the year of the referendum. So those were the
2018?
fees to the supervisor of election. That went-
Okay.
Professional services?
Well, it says 2002 millage, and I was like, what?
That's the name of the project.
I'll serve in some capacities with the state, and that may impact Kathy's services as well. So we probably need to.
So do you think
What?
35 is...
Why would that impact her?
Because there would be some things that we may have to do here. For example, we're going to have a meeting in October here for the Florida School Board Association. We're going to have a meeting in August here for the consortium.
I don't understand.
That, in fact, may affect Kathy because we'll need help. We always have before.
Yes.
Unless you would like to provide us with that.
Well, I didn't understand why the government would be providing services to a private organization.
No, she's providing it to us because Jane is incoming president.
Of a private organization.
of a professional organization that relates
Professional.
to the school board.
A professional private organization. Why would government funds be expended to help with the meeting of a private professional organization?
It's not really for the organization, it's for the president. It was for me that somebody came and sat with me and took notes from me. And it's for Jane, so it's not for the organization, it's for the,
Wait. I have the ability to have Kathy come to a private meeting of mine and take notes for me?
no, this is,
Or only for you?
yes, that's right, Eric.
This
What
is
it seems
something.
like.
This is something relative to participation in the state organizations that are affiliated with the Florida School Board Association or with a consortium of school boards. That is a subset of what we do here. I mean, this pertains to our work here. It has nothing to do with being a CPA
Why? No, I
or
would not.
selling insurance or doing anything else.
Oh, I was being facetious when I said I'd bring
I
her
know, and I
for.
am a bit too tongue-in-cheek now, but I'm
Oh.
saying it may be minimal, Eric, but if something is required here and we need to do something, there may be some minimal services that we would ask Kathy to do. That's all. I mean, I shouldn't have even brought it up.
Well, yeah,
But
no, I'm
in
glad you did.
Glad you did.
Well, in the view of everyone who's always so interested in transparency, that's why I brought it up.
I just find it hard to believe that the government would be providing staff for a private professional
Well,
organization.
there's not going to be like staff that's provided, but there may be something that is required that I need help with. And I
And
would do that
it'll
locally.
mainly be done, having served.
It'll
in
mainly
both
be
those
done by the
positions,
state staff.
It'll be done during the day.
By the people that employed from those particular organizations. But they're going to be located and take place here. And so I said there might be, just to make sure that everyone gets that.
Transparency.
Well, right. We certainly don't want people chastising others for one person asking for information or support. So
I would
appreciate
agree with that. That would be wrong to chastise somebody because one person asked for support.
So, do we need to increase it? At the end of the day,
I don't know.
Asked for it. I did my own.
So the $3,500 in overtime, currently year-to-date, it's been $1,100. So I would think even if there were additional meetings required for the superintendent search for this year, you're probably...
I would certainly request that. I would not just do that automatically without covering that with you or with a superintendent.
$3,500
Yeah.
that's in for the
I think
2021
$3,500
budget is
fine.
probably adequate.
yes.
Even though 2019 was above it?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make it more, you can. If you think it should be a little higher.
4.
I don't, what happened?
I think we should leave it as is.
Yes.
Yeah, I
We
think-
can make
I
an
think-
amendment if
I
we
think
need
it's
to.
fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Professional services. What does that include? I mean, lobbyist is the only thing I can think of.
Okay, so we have yes,
Non-amateurs.
lobbying services.
Well-
There's also
Wait, guys.
courier services.
Okay.
And let's see, there's a board communication workshop, MBJ group.
Yeah, our offsite
The retreat.
retreat.
Oh, okay.
Let's see, updates to the school board policy manual.
It's EMCS.
Yeah, so that appears to be all of the
What about our
charges.
internet service, our board docs, or whatever we call it now?
Oh,
Where does
e-agenda.
that come from? Is that in another
The
bucket?
maintenance is usually in Fund 1180, and
What is that?
it's the transfer from the
Okay.
because
We
enterprise fund.
upgraded last year, so I thought that might explain.
That's probably
it.
where all the extra time.
Yeah,
because she has
yeah,
to
because
spend
we
so much
certainly had a.
Is
That's probably
this
true.
where we would include our superintendent search and the company that's going to be
Right.
doing the?
So you'll be amending your budget for your 2020 budget to include the professional services of FSBA.
and the company doing the.
Kroll, I would think we would charge to HR. I wouldn't charge it to the school board.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Yes.
I mean, one's a
Yes.
policy, but the procedure and the training, I think it's more HR driven
Okay.
than
Okay.
board driven.
I
To be
agree.
honest with you.
That's good.
But we would probably need to amend your professional services to include covering the cost of the superintendent search for sure.
For 2021.
for 2020, I think, because we'll be encumbering that contract.
No, we would do an amendment, right? Yeah, but
for
then
this
do we
year.
need to, does anything transfer over to the 2021 year?
Well, if it's already been encumbered and you haven't spent it all, it'll roll.
Okay.
As will the budget. So, I think if it's 49.53, I think you'd probably be okay next year with the 55.
Okay.
We just need to increase the shares.
What is our lobbyist? Because it used to be, I thought it was 70 back when we first signed it. Did it go?
Oh, no,
was the- that
much
was the
less.
other
Is it lower? What is it?
Much
For
less.
2 years?
That was
That was the first one.
Kirkring and Barbario. Is it, who is it?
no, I
Not
can't remember.
Kirkring.
Polio, Becker, Poliokoff.
Becker Polyakov.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a local.
That was 70.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. And so
The new
they're
one is less.
50?
Capital City Consulting.
Yeah, what is
I
their?
think it's
I'd have to look at
40.
that.
I want to say 40. 38, 40.
49.5 because it was
Under 50.
Looks like 47.
Yeah, that sounds okay. Okay.
So if you think that that's an
And I think they're
number-
worthwhile. I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah,
for
they're
us.
staying on top of things right now.
The actual, is that a projected actual?
This is your actual as of current today.
So it's actual
Year to
to
date.
date.
Yeah.
Correct.
To date. So those numbers will be going up.
But it does include everything that's encumbered
So
in the
far.
actual, assuming we've spent it. So so the
It might
full
not go up.
47,000 is included in there already, if that makes sense, what I'm saying.
Yep. It might not go up.
Okay.
So in-county travel, FYI, the mileage rate did go up, so I don't know if you need to increase this or not. It looks like it's substantially lower this year, so I'm not sure if you guys haven't turned your mileage in yet to get reimbursed.
I've never, I've never turned my mileage in, Mitzi. I'm going to try.
So, I think based on last year's and where we're at this year, that's probably a safe number.
Mine's tracking to be the same as last year.
Mine's due.
Yes,
You're
I
a
know.
zero. It's easy to
Zero,
track zero.
I turned in 49 miles.
But my in-county travel, that may.
Me too.
Technology
No, it's going to be
related.
the same.
Me too. So,
Guess what, Eric? My income travel is
Why
zero.
is that a county
Mine's
travel
always been zero.
budget so high for 2020?
Because I don't like to fill out the
We went
form.
from,
we had each of you complete an estimate of where you thought
Oh, that's
you would
right.
do your travel because we had to approve it, and so that's what that is. But as you can see, actual year to date is
is there a lot of travel
not,
coming up?
not near there. So unless
Yeah,
there's a
that's
lot
funny.
of impending travel, I think that's what.
And some of it may be air travel, I would think.
True. So if you just kind of look at the trending of where we're at, I think 8, maybe 10 at the most. And again, you guys will have to go through the exercise during the budget process of, recording your travel, where you anticipate traveling again in the 2021 school year, and we'll have to have an affirmative vote on that because it's part of the statutes now.
And as an officer, doesn't a lot of yours get
Covered.
A
covered?
lot of mine's covered by the state. Mm-hmm.
So
You have to report.
it's your call on whether or not you want to keep that at 8 or if you want to change that, or based upon what you know you may be doing.
I think we should leave it. It's only, what happened in 2020? It's so high.
I think leaving it.
Leaving it at 8 is okay.
Yes.
All right. So then you have some technology-related expenditures, $3,000. Was that that's in the budget, but that wasn't the expense. Was that for the renewal of the license on the e-agenda system?
That sounds about right.
Dude, don't put
Software
me on me.
renewal.
I got my girlish figure to protect.
So
So
that's the license renewal.
that's their license renewal. So do you want to keep that at 3,000? We haven't paid that yet?
Is that what it costs?
It doesn't show that it has been, yeah.
Why do we have two technology lines? What's P related in our?
319 versus 369. One is more hardware, one's more software. Is that what it is? Or is one more? I don't know. The state came out with all new codes for technology items, and we had to separate everything out from where they used to be because they were related to technology. So she can probably tell you. Look up the object codes 319 and 369 and just say what they say.
It's 1% of the total.
It's nothing. And it's one could be because somebody needed.
319 says technology-related professional and technical services.
Okay.
And then 369 says technology-related rentals.
Okay, so to me, the first in 18, the $5,000 was probably related to the implementation of your software system, and $3,000 rental or licensing, the use of the system annually. So, I just feel like that's being paid for from somewhere else, though. I don't think it's.
Yeah, I have to find it. I don't see it in there. There's budget for it, but it's not hitting there. So
I know. I think it's in 1180, and it may even be going through IT. I'm not sure. So I think we can leave that at 0 because I don't know that that's necessarily your, specific expense because it is used enterprise-wide.
Kathy's not in here. How comes Kathy's salary's not in here?
Because this is just your non-salary dollars.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But you had overtime. Okay.
But overtime is outside. You
Non-salary.
kind of have to budget for your
okay.
overtime. Her salary and her base are kind of
Okay.
already included. So other purchase services, what is that?
That's a big. Those are
That's
some
the
big
millage.
variables.
That was
No.
No,
That's the next
one.
line.
It's
Oh.
the first
So you have
one
4,500, almost 6,000, then 14.
in the budget.
That's budgeted, and we've already spent 43, so I don't know.
What is that? Why did we bump it up to 14?
I don't
I
know.
looking
Your
at this
budget
right?
could have been 14 every single year.
Right.
Don't really know.
It has things.
No.
It has things in it such as PayPal for Florida Ed, Florida Teacher of the Year, AAUW Sarasota membership renewal, 99th anniversary celebration for women's equity.
What?
What?
Those are all things that are in here. Sarasota Herald Tribune.
AAU, that's the Athletic Association, right?
No.
This is
AAUW.
so the majority of it is advertising.
That's the volleyball thing my daughter's in. My daughter's in
The
AAU.
majority of it is advertising for
Huh?
You're
advertising.
kidding.
No, my daughter's in AAU.
American Association
of University Women.
Oh. Well, there's no W in AAU.
They said AAUW.
Oh.
So other dues and other purchase services here may include
dues.
costs dues and fees are down below, but this may be cost of attendance at a particular event. So it's school board member items, but the majority of it is the legal advertising
Okay.
that we're required to
Wait,
do.
so I just want to make sure I understand. So we're a member of the American Association of University Women?
Not we, individual member, because one of the things that you can use for your expenses is professional memberships.
But wouldn't that go under the dues and fees?
You would think, yeah. So
Or
maybe
is that a ticket to an event?
it could be a ticket to an event.
So then that would be under other purchase services.
Okay, so tickets and events.
Correct.
Well, I definitely don't think we need to allocate 14,000.
No.
Yeah, but I think 4,000 is a little low. I mean, because we haven't been
44,
there.
59 and 43.
So I would think that
5,000.
6,000 or 7,000 would be reasonable. 4,000, it doesn't look like it's going to cover it. Any comments on 6?
That is close to what we spent last year.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already above it now, and we still have 4 months to go.
Okay.
7.
I put 6 to
All
7.
right, let's do 6.
Okay, let's agree on 6.
Because I don't know what all dumps in there. So,
So it's $500 a month to go to events.
yeah.
And handle all of your legal advertising.
Well, that's the.
Well,
Legal advertising is very expensive.
Well, it is, and I'm surprised that we didn't blow through that higher when we did our whole policy review. So, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which would have been 2019, which is why we were probably closer to the 6,000 if you consider how much we did.
I'm just not sure how large the ads are that you're putting in the paper.
Small.
I will tell you that
They're
ad
like
for the
this.
budget is $6,000 by itself. and that's not coming out of your budget. That comes out of mine.
Yeah.
But we pay
not
over
cheap.
$6,000 for the budget.
No, I know. There's legislation trying to get it digital. So just so
God.
you know.
That would be wonderful since that's how most people get
Keeps getting pushed away, but
Okay, so 6,000. Then the next one is other purchase services. That is strictly the millage. So it was the 332 less the 38. That's the refund I received back from the supervisor of elections office the next year.
don't need to
And
add
that's why
anything.
it's charged to the 0485 number at the very end. That's a project. That is the millage. So we charge the fees to the millage itself.
okay, well, that doesn't need to change.
So yeah, there's 0 there. Then consumable supplies is 5,000. I mean, you're tracking just about there.
Yeah.
So I can have the district pay for membership for an organization, and then I can bring Kathy with me to take notes.
Stop.
Is there an organization you want me to think I should belong to? It's going to be really fun. The Atlanta Braves season ticket membership.
Here we go. Here we go.
Cut up the cake.
Come on, it's funny.
Come on. It's funny.
Okay, keep going. So consumables stay at 5. That's a little high, unless, again, 2018 we were 57, if you will, but 5,
48,
3,
and then 50.
so probably 5,000 is fine, I guess. Don't you think?
I mean, the only reason I'd say it might go, well, it would go up this year. Actually, not next year, is, any supplies we might need,
Oh, from the advertising of the superintendent.
it's particularly the brochure and stuff.
So how much would that be?
But that would be this year. So generally,
Oh, okay.
that would probably be, those kind of costs we would incur this year. So
Books and other than tech, we bought something in 2019. Wonder what that was.
some $127 for a book. I don't know that that's. These like one-offs here. This other materials are $37. These are things normally we just move out of the big consumables into a line item to cover it. We wouldn't normally just budget for it.
Okay, then other dues and fees. What is our cost? Do we know for the value adjustment board?
That's
all.
yeah.
It's like 70, right?
Well, it was 97 in 2019, so I just went.
Oh, that's right. It went way.
It's a big one.
It's 101, 427 or 72.
101, 472.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
the total amount
that's
is for
the
value?
actual that's in there right now.
Yeah, that's the actual. It's
But how much of that is value adjustment board?
No, that's what I want to know.
It says value adjustment board billing.
It's gone way up.
He used 97 to 101. Well,
But it
used to be
like in the
70s.
50s,
Yeah.
60s and stuff.
how do we? That's crazy.
Went way up. So, and I've actually required them to provide me with
Who
all
determines those that? Because it's
or 2/5 or whatever of what the total cost is, and I've asked them. They provide me with a complete ledger of their expenditures because I requested it.
yeah. Well, so and then is
went
it?
up and it was once it hit 6 figures, I'm like, okay, now I need to know exactly what you spent.
So who determines the fees for the cost of that?
Well, so I'm on the value adjustment board, so.
That's why I'm looking. That's why I'm looking over at you, and I would ask the same.
I don't recall. It's possible we vote on the actual budget, but the majority of the fees is the general masters who hear all the cases, and then we have
for the appeals of
Right.
the values.
For the
Because I talked to
appeals.
other counties, they were shocked at the cost of ours.
And then we approve each thing in piecemeal. So I don't know if I've actually seen them all together. So we approve the budget for the general masters individually, and then we also approve the budget for our attorney. Our attorney being the value adjustment board's
Attorney.
attorney.
Okay.
So those are the two biggest costs. I don't know if the clerk or the court, they also provide support. So I don't know if they have some internal charge.
May allocate some staff.
And we
time
allocate
to
some staff time to
a
that.
lot.
But the two biggest things are the general masters.
Yeah.
We probably have 10 to 15. Anybody who puts in an appeal will go in front of a general master at some point.
Right.
And then the staff time for legal.
Okay.
You got to wrap up.
So it's us and the county. We pay a third, and they pay 2/3. So
Yes.
Except for a few years when we forgot.
Well, actually, they never sent a bill, and then I
That's
get a
right.
call from the clerk going, "I haven't sent a bill to you guys for 3 years." This was like right after I started, and I went, "Okay, well, what do you want me to do?" about it?"
I think
So
the
we
total
agreed.
budget's $300,000 for the value adjustment board, and
Yeah.
we pay 100 of it.
Yeah. And I think we're done now. We had them divvy up those 3 years over 4 or whatever it was, and we paid a little extra over time, and then they got all their money. But it was kind of,
Okay.
you didn't bill me. And,
Talk to Christian, get a cut.
I am going to.
So do you think 120 is good?
He's on it.
I think
I know.
120 is probably good. Hopefully the fees don't go up any higher. And you have other membership dues that you have included in here, correct?
I would assume so.
So I guess that would be my concern is this 120 going to be enough? So estimate another like 18,000 for all other membership dues. Does that
I'll
sound?
put a question mark behind on.
What's the?
When are we plan? We're planning to go through this now, but then have some chance to.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. We just kind of were looking at this.
Ballpark,
We're just
yeah.
kind of going through.
Starting.
This is the exercise that we go through, and then we can provide you all of the details, and then you can
10,
go through it if
is
you
about
feel like it's
5,000.
something that you need to make
10,
changes to
15.
later.
This is the last
Yeah.
piece, right? of the
So
budget.
120 is probably reasonable because it's what I mean. I don't know what other ones, but FSBA is approximately 5, 10, 15.
And then the
you have the
consortium's
consortium
3,000?
3. So you're already you're 18.
And then you've got your two, which
Mine?
2,000 last
No.
year and this year.
Yeah,
I
but there's
paid.
no-
I paid 4,000 last.
You did not pay a check for
I
me.
paid a check for you. Yes, I did.
What?
No,
We did. I think
No.
we
No,
did
you
last
didn't.
July. Are you sure?
positive.
I
Positive.
thought.
Nope.
We might have 1 year, and then we got reimbursed.
So we're not doing that. They're not charging a fee.
Nope.
You didn't sign a check for me.
No, you did
I
not. I'm
thought
positive
that
we
I
didn't get-
approved
A check for me?
payment
Positive.
to the
No.
association for $4,000 last
This,
July.
this might have been in the beginning when we
No, it
thought
was
that
while I
you were
was
going to be
present, so it had
part
to have been
of.
last year.
2 years ago.
That might. I don't know because I wasn't signing checks then.
As a general rule, I reimburse the district if
I
somebody
know.
writes a check
No,
for me.
there-
I know you do.
So if there is one, then I want to know it, so I'll write a check back.
Nope.
Okay.
I'll write a check out for 2,000 if that's the case for me.
I don't think so. So,
No, it wasn't.
so do you think 120 would work, or do you
would-
think it should be a little more?
I think it should.
120. Well,
Wait, so 18
good.
plus 102, yeah.
I mean, it's provided there's no increase in the VAB fees next year.
Well, I can't promise you anything.
Correct. That would be my
Just kidding.
concern.
125.
Okay. Just because,
is-
you know, my guess is that if there's more appeals, then
Yep.
But the insurance and premium, why is we only had something in 2018 and we don't have, is that billed somewhere
yeah.
else?
And I think that they just, right, it's
Bundled D&O
it
or
is
something in
the
the.
property insurance, and we kind of charge it out to all cost centers. It's your proportionate share of the property insurance for that office space upstairs.
Okay.
So I think that they just said this is silly, so
That's a
they
bargain.
stopped it. Yeah.
Yeah, which we never used.
So, and then so the last thing you have on here is your cell phones.
Why does that go up? Why is that going up so much?
Wow, that's a lot.
I don't have a cell phone.
I guess when you look
I
at
don't either.
2019,
It's 1,600, so I think they were thinking it's.
This is only for
1,800.
us.
This is only your cell phone.
I have my own cell phone.
I thought it was $1.99 for the program. I mean, I remember we went
The
through.
phone is 99 cents. The monthly fee is 45 to 60. I mean, you pay for a phone service.
Right.
You don't pay for the phone. They're 99 cents. But
For the record, I do have a cell phone, but I cut it. That's why there's negative 2018, because I cut a check for the balance of my term for whatever my cell phone bill was going to be. And I
okay,
reimbursed
so
the
this
district.
is you've already paid.
Yeah.
That's why it's negative 2018, because
Gotcha.
I wrote a check back to the district.
Okay. I don't know that it needs to be.
But I don't know why there would be a.
I increased to
I don't know why
1,800.
it's that high.
Well, you guys, so in 19 it was $1,600.
That was at the very end of it. That's why.
The very end of.
2019. That we were given cell phones.
Right. And so this year to date, you've spent $732. And you have to remember, our cell phone bills are like 2 months behind. I mean, they are really late in getting through the system.
Okay.
So this is probably maybe,
1/4
I
of the
mean,
year.
5 months worth at the most. I'd say 5 months.
For two
So
cell phones?
are there
I
only
thought
two?
we should. I thought all of us.
I have
had
a
one.
cell phone.
Because you have to understand, he paid for his in advance, but I'm still getting his monthly charges. So you'll see it, it's negative 1 year, and then it's going to be the full charges every year
Yeah,
after that.
But still, $1,800 for 3 cell phones?
That's a lot.
That's $600 a year. That's $50 a month.
Yeah.
It's not a lot.
No.
Yeah, it's not a lot. So
No.
I pay like I pay like 10 cell phones in my office, and it's It's close to $1,000. So yeah,
Mine's
a month.
$174 a month for my cell phone.
So it's 18.
So $50 a month's a bargain.
Yeah, but the individuals, the cost for an individual cell phone plan is cheaper than the cost of a
Mass,
business cell
yeah.
phone plan. So
It's
mine,
about $50 a month
yeah,
per
mine,
phone.
yeah, mine's $1,000 a month for my personal, for for 10.
That's what I have.
No, so it's
Everybody's.
$100.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that the cell phone bills run on average about 50. Some are under different plans. Some have just radios. Some have, different things. So, but on average, they run about $50 a month. So $600 a year, 3 phones, $1,800. That would be right on the money.
What about the audit committee costs? I mean,
And those are not in here, so.
I would imagine we'll have some, because
It's
it's
the audit.
ours, right?
Yes, and that would be under professional services, I would assume.
Well, I don't know. Are they professional services, or is Kathy going to be staffing it, or?
Well,
Kathy's
the
under our
committee
cost center.
itself is a volunteer committee.
But the
So
actual-
Other than consumable supplies and time, you won't have any cost related to that. But the actual auditor,
Yeah,
you need
it's under our cost center, and then wouldn't that the 25,000 for the risk assessment that's already it's encumbered and included in here?
I would imagine. So.
Okay, and so then for the 2021 year, we would need to include or amend
could
our
be
budget
in
for
mine.
2020, but
I'd
it
try to
shouldn't
look.
be.
No, I know.
It's in yours, yeah.
But it's under the board function, but it may be under financial services.
Okay.
So I'll double check
Okay.
it. Because the regular district audit is under mine,
Okay.
but under the board's function.
Okay.
So I'll double check.
But when you look at our board, when you look at the budget that you give us every month, it's the board's it's like
Has it
1.6 million.
dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more than just
So it's
this.
grabbing different areas. Yeah. Under
Yes,
different-
because the function under the board includes other areas.
and that includes salaries, I think. No.
It includes Kathy's salary.
But it's 1.6 million.
Come on, Kathy.
Yeah,
You're holding
1.6
out on me.
million.
All those note taking.
So yes,
I assume that's
but
it's the
you
legal
have
and the
like
audit
$100 and some
expense.
$1,000s of audit expenses
Okay.
on the
Can we
school.
move on?
Yes, we can move on. So I will add that in here. I'll just put internal audit services. Okay, so anything else, Krista?
No, that's it. So basically what we've done here is what we've been doing with each cost center, going through all of the items, and then probably even a little bit more detail, because Mitzi likes to go into each line item with each one of them. And so, but it's been very good. Everyone's been really great. And so then basically then now we'll have this as kind of like our start. And then when the budgets go out or the staffing allocations, then you'll get it again. And then you get another sweep additives if you know things are changing. So.
First time as associate CFO, you did a great job for the board. Good job, Krista.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Krista. Thank you. Next is Kroll.
So, yeah, the next is a discussion on the Kroll contract, the equity contract. I think Art's gonna come up and help walk us through this.
Before we leave the budget, I guess it's a little early to say what exactly is coming out in the proposals for the teacher salaries or anything, but, do we have any?
So the proviso language that's out there on the Senate side is a minimum classroom teacher salary of $47,500. They've appropriated statewide $500 million. 80% needs to be spent on bringing classroom teacher salaries up to the minimum, and 20% is for everybody else. Now, there is language that states that you can, if you've met your minimum, that you can take what's remaining and add it to your 20%. Yes, if you have any. And I think we're one of a few districts that do. And then on the House side, it's a minimum of $50,000 per teacher, of which $500 million has been appropriated for the classroom teacher salaries and $150 million for everybody else. But again, with the language that if you get to the 50,000, then you can take whatever's left over and apply that to, compression and bringing your other instructional personnel up to that minimum level. So on the 47.5, the amount that was appropriated, both appropriations were based strictly upon the number of students you serve, not based on your current salary. So we're one of the districts that are faring a little better because we have a higher starting salary than most school districts. So there is actually more money left over in the 47.5 to address the other instructional personnel and actually deal a little bit with compression. The House side and getting to 50 equivalates almost to a 13-year teacher in our school district. So there is not nearly enough money left over to deal with any compression. We could probably get every instructional person to 50, but we would not have enough to deal with any kind of compression issues.
Well, I'm concerned about some language in the Senate that says if a district achieves or is at or above the 47.5 minimum but has not increased the minimum salary by at least 10%.
5%. 10%? I read 5.
Well, I mean, maybe it was updated since this was February 9th.
Oh, the stuff I have from Joy said
It's updated.
5.
Yeah, because I'm saying 10%. So you're saying that's been updated?
I don't know.
I just think that's in the Senate bill, and
Let me look.
so maybe we need to look at that, because I'm like, how would we possibly? I mean, so that would mean if we're at the 47.5, we have to give a.
Yeah, the proviso language I have from the Senate was 47.5, but has not increased the minimum salary by at least 5%.
5%, so that's been
and
changed.
it's a 7-point-something% increase for us. So from 44.3 to 47.5 is like 7.23%. So it would cover us on the 5%.
Can we do this under member comments, please?
Okay.
Since it's not on the agenda.
That's just a budget question I just wanted to ask. We can move on.
Hi, Art.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, the board instructed me and the superintendent to go forth and speak with Kroll and negotiate a contract with them. We've had some discussions and drafts going back and forth. What you have in front of you is the most recent draft from Kroll. I've spoken with Mr. Ehlers about this on a number of occasions, trying to clarify the scope of services, which is in the first paragraph, and the fees. We have had discussions and we've made changes. They've agreed to changes which have brought the fees down substantially, particularly with regard to Phase 1 and their data collection. That was about an $80,000 or so move. So this is what they have proposed. It's obviously still a large number, but this is what they have proposed to you. And I suppose we're here for your feedback, and Superintendent and I will try to answer any questions you have about it.
Right. We wanted to bring it as a workshop item for you guys to have some discussion on. It is on your board agenda for this evening to approve or deny, but it is a large ticket, and we thought we should have some conversation about it.
Shirley.
Now, one thing under Phase 1, 2B, statistics and data on past reports of misconduct and complaints, that could take them hours to go through these, especially the last report. I mean, is there some way that we could do an overview of the 2 complaints that, ended up being, well, I guess, the 2 complaints against the superintendent that brought these things together so that they don't, I don't want to give them, that pile of stuff we had to read.
Well, there was, I've had discussion with Mr. Ehlers about that this, from my perspective at least, and I believe the board's perspective, is a forward-looking process that, what has happened in the past has gotten us to this point, but we're not looking for a rehash of all of that. So really, the way I have phrased it to him is, we want help with, if there's a complaint tomorrow, what is the appropriate policy procedures that we are to follow, which is why we have substantially changed what was in the original draft of Phase 1, where there were many, many more provisions for interviewing people, et cetera. They have said they believe they still need to interview a number of people and listed with our input who those people might be. But we can certainly go back and emphasize that once again if that's the board's direction. I think Ms. Corcoran and I were both hesitant to say outright no to things without the board's input, but we've certainly emphasized, I have, that we're looking to the future, not for a recap of what has happened in the past.
How much would that influence the actual policy itself?
What I'm going to comment then, I'll call in.
Go ahead.
I thought that we hired this firm because they had expertise in policies and procedures, not that they were going to do research and look at what we had gone through in order for them to develop policies and procedures. This doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I think then that really is part of phase 2, perhaps, what you're talking about, which is researching similar kind of districts and other school board policies, and that's up to the board. I can't tell them don't do that if they tell me that's what they need to do.
Here's what I'm saying, Art, but why would they have, if they're known for this, why would they have to research? They should have policies and procedures pertaining to this. They shouldn't have to research. Bridget.
I understand your point.
I do too. So 2 things, and I know I talked to both Art and Mitzi about this, is I agree. My takeaway is they have very depth of understanding of Title IX, which is what's going to significantly draft our policies and understanding so that we stay out of, so there's best practices and they have that understanding. I think especially because I believe we had such an emphasis on training, understanding where your district is at or where your staff is at, or where that makes a big difference on the training implementation, because you could say, hey, here's a handbook and X, Y, and Z, this is a best practice. But if there is obviously what brought us to this point, I don't want to have an intensive amount of back research, to your point. But I know and I'm very grateful for the push, narrowing the scope to a point, because to what I've said is the last thing I want to do is spend. Who knows? These things could be they could get up to the millions of dollars if we don't keep it tight and narrow. But I also want to make sure whatever we're putting forward, this is a 6-figure ticket item, that it has to be effective and we don't find ourselves paying $200,000 and then it not have the outcome we want. And from what I've heard all of us say is the training and implementation is by far one of the most important parts. So I do think, and I'm not an expert in this area, but I do consider the understanding kind of what has transpired from a high level, and I think Shirley brings up a good point. I don't want them, I would hope that they're not going through all of that, and unless they identify specifically why that is, we should keep I don't know how you can cap that. And that's the challenge with any kind of hourly bill. Do we have a not to exceed? Are we going to? It's hard with a consultant not to exceed, because then you're at a not to exceed, then we have a half of a project done. But in good faith, I would hope that that would not be the case.
Yeah, but not to exceed 177.
I believe there is. I understand the point of if this is their area of expertise, what kind of research would need to be done. I don't know. Did they speak to that at all as far as?
Well, the explanation of proposed budget.
Right, that's what I'm looking at. Yep.
Yeah, the end of that talks about
phase 2 best practices.
Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then total fees 140 to 165, with additional expenses capped at 12,000. So that's where the superintendent's coming up with the 177. And they say they're sensitive to our cost concerns and will endeavor to complete the scope of work for less than the not to exceed amounts. So, but that's not a guarantee.
It isn't, and I
we have a not to exceed. That's
the guarantee.
That's the guarantee. Not that it's going to be less than that.
The only part is, and I agree with the sentiment of concern. Why do you have to do research? But I also do believe that their work does in fact speak for itself. So they have a process and I don't want to be so much guiding them, because there could be value there where I don't know. I mean that truly, is that if there's a reason you're looking to a degree of understanding the culture and what have you, and how you embed best practices into that, I think that's meaningful. But That would be just my takeaway. So.
Jane?
Well, I don't expect them to change our culture. I don't expect them to get in the weeds of what we've done in the past either, because I think we've all learned a lot from the past, and rehashing those issues I don't think are what we need here. But I think there's got to be some happy medium between, 460 hours or however many hours we're talking. And my concern is that they'll be here all year and we won't get anywhere. That we'll be at the end of the year, and we're at the beginning of the year now, and at the end of this year, calendar year, we'll be going, okay, where's our, and we can't have that. So I think we've got to assess in our negotiations another level, which is a serious timeline, because we want this ready to go by next fall, don't we? I mean, we may summer so that we can do some training, make sure that we don't waste any more time with this, and we have things in good repair. So that's my concern. It's a lot of money, but if this is going to put us on the right track, hey, I'm all for it. So I will use your guidance from a standpoint, Mitzi and Art, to go forward, but that's one of the big concerns I have.
Well, in the conversations I've had, I've as I said, I've stressed we're looking for a new policy. We're not looking for an investigation, which is something that they obviously do in other contexts of what has gone on before. And Mr. Ehlers has said to me he understands that. They've redrafted their Phase 1 considerably to reflect that, but he also said for them to do what we've asked them to do, they need some background information. So I would say to you, and there's not a particular time frame in here, we certainly can discuss that.
And when would they start? That's another one.
Well, that's something we can discuss. My impression was they were ready to get started and start earning their fees. One thing I would ask the board is to look at, because this is something that Mitzi and I wrote, in essence, was the scope in paragraph 1. Obviously, if there's something in there that you say, no, we don't need that, that may drive costs down. But, that was our best effort at trying to put into a relatively short amount of words what the board had discussed. So, but if there's something in there that you say, no, we don't need that, then that could drive costs differently.
Shirley?
I'm looking at the cost breakdown, and the point that Bridget made is the training and implementation is the most important part, which also comes at the end, and they've got that at the lowest price. I think from what we're saying, we want to reduce the cost up front, the interviews and the information, and maybe instead of 40 to 45, 30 to 40, the best practices 50 to 60, and then 60 to 65 on the training and implementation. I mean, I don't know why it's so much money, more money on the front end than on the back end. And also, I mean, if they've done Phase 1 and Phase 2 and they're on budget, and then we get to Phase 3, and the thing that we really wanted done hasn't happened yet, and they go, oh, well, it's going to cost this. It's like, oh, I mean, I just think that the dollar amounts there are a little off from what I think our priorities are.
Well, the training is probably easier to estimate in the sense that they've written 3 to 4 training sessions. So that's a discrete figure. If you take each of those as a day, or I don't know what they were figuring of a training session, but you can more, right, but you can say that's going to take X number of hours per training session, as opposed to the other things which are less, more nebulous. Drafting. How long is it going to take to draft the policy?
Now, when they draft those, they'll come back to us. They'll hear our comments and maybe go back and redraft them.
Well, that's part of under Phase 2. You see, they're doing their research and review, and I hear the comments about that. But then the bulk of Phase 2 is drafting, and then the last part is solicitation of feedback and revisions. So presumably, Phase 2 includes here's what we believe are appropriate policies, board, review them, and give us your feedback, and then we will change them or not, depending on the feedback that we receive from you. And then phase 3 is truly after everything else is done, now the policies are in place, now we're going to come down and train people on them. And I think that's an easier amount to say that's going to take us X number of hours.
Eric?
Yeah, my pushback is on the cost of phase 1. To me, phase 1 is basically, half of it is having Al Hareda send them this massive email with 20 attachments. I mean, that's the bulk of phase 1. And then the other half of phase 1 is them coming out and individually interviewing people. To say that that's $40,000 just seems a little insane to me. I would think that Al Hareda or somebody like that could get that email and get them to all that stuff, and they can read it. A day or two to interview all these people, and to say that that's $40,000, that's the place I'm going to push back on. The biggest thing to me is phase 2 and phase 3, and definitely training's important, but if you don't get phase 2 right, the foundation for the training, that's where you mess it all up. And the question is, do you already have somebody else that already has done this? That we cannot be the first school district to come up with an equity.
No, but from a K-12 standpoint, we kind of are. I mean, that's what's so wild about it. I mean, that's.
And we've certainly identified some flaws in our system that they won't have to do too far to figure out the shortcomings that our existing system has. So I would definitely think that you can get the most cost savings by pushing back on the price tag for phase 1. It's not a reasonable price to say that that's going to cost $40,000 to $45,000.
Well, we can certainly go back. That's coming off of 6 figures. So
I understand. I appreciate the 80 you've kicked back.
Well, and I mean, I can go back and say the board has reviewed this, and they're still concerned about phase 1. Right. That we need to be forward-looking, not backward-looking.
And then the issue with phase 2 is how much from scratch are they going from? I mean, because if they're going to write it completely from scratch, that's one price. Or if they're going from frameworks of other places and tweaking it for our individual needs, or taking our existing policy and closing up the gaps, those are 2 different prices between tweaking existing and closing up the gap being one, or starting fresh. And if they're starting fresh, then maybe they're not the entity for us.
Let me throw this out. You pretty much know all the pitfalls that we have. And are you capable of writing the policies? You did before, so are you capable?
Well, I helped before, and look where we are. So.
No. But I don't think it was the policy that got us in trouble. It was the using of the policy and the forms that were associated with it. I don't think it's the policy itself.
Well, I'm certainly happy to do whatever the board would like. I would certainly want to do.
Would you charge us $40,000?
Well,
77.
Yeah, I think 177 is the relevant question, but there is value to the board to get an expert, because there are several layers to this. One, the most important thing is you want the best policy you can get to both protect the district and protect everyone within the district. And the road you've gone down is designed to make sure that you do that. Another not irrelevant part of that consideration is if there's a problem in the future and someone says, what due diligence did you do to get you to this point? You can say, we did everything we could. We went and contracted with, this expert group who has done this around the country. So in essence, we've done everything we can do to try to make this as best as we can. Not to say that I wouldn't do that, but I don't have all of the experience that these people do. So that's not an irrelevant thing, and that And whether it's the Kroll Group or some other group that's like that, I mean, I think that's why you went down this road in the first place. That provides some credibility and some defense to whatever is ultimately done. So I don't want you to, and frankly, I probably don't give you that in the same way that this group does or someone else. So I don't want that to be lost
So
in the conversation.
my disappointment is that the fact that they don't have something already available from that they have done for another school. I mean, that I thought they were the experts, so they were going to come in and they would have best practices. They'd have policies in place that they have used someplace else, and then from there we would, do we like it or not like it, and ask them then to do forms, or if they have forms, and then do the training. Because I think where we got in trouble is that a lot of our people don't understand what the training is. The training was done by a video, and it's just not, I think that's where the problem was, one of the main problems. So I don't know which one of you came first. So, Bridget?
So I think here's my perspective, and I'm not in the HR world, but from a consulting and a risk management, there are best practices. But you cannot lift something and put it right here and it work for everyone, right? Exactly. It has to be customized, it has to be tailored for it to actually work. Otherwise, we could go and Google it and just put it out there. I mean, so I don't care who the company is, but that is just from a consulting, any consultant we've talked to. I mean, even from our superintendent search, there is best practices, but what works for organization A, even if it's in the same field, is not necessarily the best. It's going to meld properly or implemented exactly the same way. So that's one. So I do think there has to be, from a front end standpoint, there's got to be some research. I mean, so that it is implemented in an effective way, and not necessarily to change the culture. Now, the second part is I am 100% in agreement with Jane that I would like to see a timeline put in here.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. The other part is, as far as phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. The other part is that I like, and so starting from scratch, and I don't know if we can find this out, because I think from a K-12 standpoint, I don't really think there's anyone who has that basic framework. But what I do believe, what was beneficial and valuable, we use MSU as an example, they have faculty, student, and even a law enforcement arm or an investigative arm that they would have some background in. I don't know how applicable that would be, but I would hope that could be something embedded in from a starting point from Sarasota County's standpoint. So it's not drafting, from a blank piece of paper. And that's from my perspective why I thought they were a value from their background. So I don't know if that's something you can get a better sense of, because we want a better idea of, is this target realistic? If you're starting to type from a blank piece of paper, well, yeah, we're a little concerned. I understand. I mean, I'm not going to push back on the front end phases, because I do think there's value of them understanding, not to rehash. I don't need an investigation, but we can give them some cliff notes. Here's some whatever. Here's some of the investigations we've done, what they've highlighted. But clearly there was the chain of command, or the lack of communication. Those processes are important, I think, to understand where it was broken before. So when you teach, that they understand that's a huge area of focus, so that people understand that. So timeline I would like to see be articulated. And I'm not gonna push too much on the phase 1, because I do think there's value in understanding that. But just to see if there's starting from scratch, or how they intend to implement those policies. Are they utilizing a framework that they use? For example, I would use MSU or any of the other. Actually, they had a ton of different education institutions that they've used, so that they can bring those forward. That was why I supported that.
Shirley?
I think importantly is making sure that we get that form. I think some of the problems we've had in the past is that the victim, their concern about coming forward and bringing all the information forward. I think that we need a form that they can fill out that clearly details, this is what I think happened, and this is wrong. And then we want to know, well, what do you want to see happen to make it better. I mean, how do you want us to fix this? And then this investigator, this separate investigator that works for the board, so that we don't run into, the boss's bosses, all of that. I mean, we kind of know what we need, and I know Hillsborough County gave a whole talk on that FSBA, and they talked on some of those things. I mean, I have an idea of what I'd like to see, because I see where we fell apart. I mean, what we don't want is somebody coming in and saying, well, 2 years ago, so-and-so did this. Well, did you fill out one of the forms? Did you file the complaint? And it's like, so it has to happen. I mean, those rules have to be put in place, and the victim has a responsibility to come forward if they want us to do something, and they have to come forward and bring the information forward and clearly state what the problem is. And if we don't have that, we can't do something about it. And so there we go. We have, you didn't do this, we can't do anything. So that's what's important in my mind.
Right, and forms are part of the scope of work, and they're also listed in Phase 2, which includes number 7, drafting revised, updated complaint forms, report templates, and checklists. So that's clearly an important part of what we're looking for here.
So are we safe? Are we willing to vote for this contract on our board meeting this afternoon? Because that's on our board meeting to vote.
But the time frame is something I'm a little hesitant to. I mean,
Or do you think we could get with Mark and find out if we could provide us with a time frame before the 3 o'clock meeting?
We can try.
Yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, to me, otherwise, I think Jane made it. It's a good point. I mean, I don't.
And we can pull it, put it on the next one.
Yeah, if we have to. I mean, ideally, I'd like to vote on it if we can, but I think Jane makes a good point.
Well, all right, so for purposes of the next, before 3 o'clock, then, what I'm going to do is try to reach him, and, that may or may not happen, and then to look for a time frame for him to put in the contract,
I guess.
Yes.
So.
presumably, and get it back to us.
Yes.
And if that occurs, are we then otherwise all right, or are there other issues? Because if there are other issues, then I don't think it's realistic to think we're going to get this done by 3 o'clock.
No,
Right.
not
It's
I think the time frame, and then I would be all right to sign it.
Because we're getting to a part of the year for graduations and spring break and all these other things, so we're running out of time.
Yeah, no.
And then the summer comes. Oh, yeah. So I think that we really need to move at Mach speed, and so if he can give us I'm okay if we get rolling as quickly as possible, because we need to have this done and ready to go next year.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you. And I like the scope. I think you did a good job. I'm very
Thank you.
pleased.
All right, well, I will see what I can do, and you'll know by 3.
Well, wait a minute. So if he doesn't, if you cannot reach him,
Then I'll pull
then we'll pull it, and it'll wait 2 weeks.
March.
That's a big ticket item to have an ambiguity. Yeah.
No, we could also find time to meet and
Just see what we can do.
yeah.
Put positive,
Okay.
positive energy.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Stand up and stretch 5 minutes.
Okay. How about a 5-minute stretch break I've been asked for?
The person from Michigan State went to jail. Just got, because she was verbally
Okay, great.
The AAU is the. Okay, but AAU is the American Athletic Association. Union? It's not a union, but.
American Athletic.
But it is a real thing, right?
I think it's got another, letter. Caroline was a ringmaster at the circus.
It's union.
So was I.
It's amateur athletic union.
Okay.
When did you do it, Caroline?
Sunday.
I did mine at 7 Sunday too at 1 o'clock. Oh, you were 7?
5.
5.
I'm Friday at 7.
My kids thought it was so cool.
I'm not doing it.
It was, I love the circuit. It was so fun. It was
So
fun.
do I. I talked about,
Oh, the guy that did the balancing. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. I'm just amazed. It's amazing.
I talked about the boys being involved in circus. And
I didn't talk very much. I was pretty quick.
I didn't talk much.
I thought I was going to, but I'm like, no.
No, I asked them before I started.
Circus people.
Huh?
I am not.
Oh.
I'm not just not much.
They gave me a jacket.
I'm not too much for those except the circus.
Let us return from recess.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Vogel?
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be able to work with you through the School Board Association on your superintendent search. And I was very impressed before I get started with your budget process, your budget guide, and what you're doing now also in order to move up the ability to start advertising for positions earlier. So I think that, you're definitely on the right track. And it looks like the budget picture is a little bit better than it's been in past years, although there are always challenges. So we know that. What I'd like to do first, we have about 2 hours, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
What my suggestion is, because we've passed out a lot of material and sent to you, and I want to go through that, is that the first hour we do what we call is a pre-search interview, and that's where we identify what the priorities of the board are, talk a little bit about the relationships and qualities, and talk about the challenges that are facing the board with the new superintendent search. This is real helpful for us as we're starting to recruit candidates, and everything we do the first hour will help us as we work through the brochure, and it'll then the second hour, then I have a draft timeline with no ending date on it because we haven't set that up yet, and I'll pass this out to you when we get to that second hour, and then I'll go through all the steps in the whole process. But after the first hour, there'll be a lot of issues that will come up. For example, like the amount of community involvement you're going to want that will be included. So when we leave today, we will have an overview of the process. We will have input from all the board members on areas such as qualifications, salary, community input, anything like that, and then I'll try to put it all together so the next time we'll be able to, when we have a meeting, we can kind of finalize those things. So I wanted to first talk about what's in this package here, and I'd ask you to pull out just one thing out of here for the first hour. First is your brochure that you used last time. I will tell you, this brochure has served as a model for other districts. If you've seen what other districts have done, it is outstanding. And so I would put this to the side because...
So are we getting royalties on that?
Well, you could. It's really good. The second, what we gave you were guidelines for the search advisory committee, if you use the search committee. And we're not going to talk about that today, but these are some guidelines. The third is the community forums process. And the process we used last time was very effective. And then on the back of that are some questions that we ask. We're not going to really talk about today. The next sheet are opportunities for community involvement. And that one we may be talking about, so we'll probably be referring back. The next is the agenda for the pre-search interview that we're going to be doing. And you may want to pull that out of there because this will be the first thing we're going to work on. And then we have some surveys. We have a survey questionnaire from Escambia County that we recently did. We have community surveys from Martin County. And in Martin County, they chose also to do a staff survey. So there's an example of their staff survey that they did there. And then there's another survey we just did in Volusia. And some of the surveys are all different types. Some surveys are people will select the choice, the best choice out of selections. Others, they'll rate different selections, but we'll talk about that later. So today, for this first hour, what I'd like to do, if it's okay with the board, is go through the pre-search interview and then also have this hand by your side also, your search brochure. And then Mrs. Corcoran passed out some school district priorities, strategic goals, and additional items for consideration. We're not going to be spending a lot of time on that, but one thing that will be helpful is that as we're talking is to kind of, I'm going to be asking you what you see are the successes of the district and the strengths and then the challenges, and these will just give you some ideas as we talk through that. So the first thing that I'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read your mission out of your brochure. And the mission is the Sarasota County School District prepares students to achieve the highest learning standards by engaging a high-quality staff, involving parents, and earning the support of the community. Now, the mission, and I think Ms. Corcoran said, when a new superintendent comes aboard, you're going to work towards a strategic plan of sort. But right now, this is your mission. And what I see the mission is, this is what everybody in the entire school district comes to work every day for. This is the heart and soul. This is what we do every day. And it's really important that every person who works in this organization understands their role in completing the mission, whether the food service people or others. And then I'd like to talk about the vision very quickly. And the vision places learning at the center of all activities to enable all learners to lead productive, responsible, and healthful lives. Now, the vision is something we all strive for. You know, we may not be there, it may take time to get there, but that's what we're all working for. And in this search and everything that we do. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. In starting out, I'd like to go ahead and just hear from the board and spend about 5 minutes and talk about what successes that you're proud of as a school board and some of the accomplishments. And I know we could probably spend all morning on that you are very proud of in this district. And every question that I ask will eventually help us develop this brochure, because that's something that is in the brochure, what successes we have in the district. So who would like to start with maybe a success that you're very proud of here?
Well, let's go around this way.
Okay.
Bridget?
Oh man, you gotta give me.
I'm switching back.
I think that I'm proud of the innovation and collaborative spirit
Okay.
and the arts. Sorry, I gotta add that one.
Okay. We'll just go around and we'll keep adding to the list, and then we'll stop. You can go fast.
I'm proud of the quality and dedication of our teachers and staff.
Okay.
I'm only allowed to get one thing.
Well, we're going to come back around.
We'll come around. Jane?
Student achievement.
Okay. Student achievement.
Shirley?
I
Student
think
achievement, that means you're A.
Well, that means they're A. That means we have 22 students at Pineview this year with are there finalists
Merit?
in
National-
National Merit Scholarship. It means, kids that are achieving great things and going great places.
Okay.
that we do innovative practices such as the Summer Learning Academy.
Okay. Okay.
High-quality staff.
Okay, we'll put a star by that one. Okay, high quality staff, you got that?
Right? It's different. It looked.
Okay.
Missy, you want to add?
Oh, no, you guys do it.
Okay.
Teachers with advanced degrees.
So now we just
Go on.
okay. Something. Community involvement.
I was gonna say that and philanthropic spirit.
Philanthropic spirit.
You went out of
Amazing.
turn.
It is.
Yeah.
You went out of turn, Mrs. Goodwin.
I'm sorry, what?
You went out of turn.
Okay, community
Center.
involvement.
Go out of town a lot.
And philanthropic spirit. Don't ask me to spell that.
Well, one of the things that I like to do is make sure I get my spelling right, so I wish you.
Don't worry.
I can spell.
Okay, philanthropic.
I'm the scribe.
ANTHROPIC.
You really know how to spell that?
Philanthropic?
Yeah.
It's actually pretty, I mean,
That's an SAT word.
No, it's
It's amazing. Okay.
I'd say volunteers,
Okay.
parent involvement. Well, it's more than parents that are volunteers.
Okay.
good news.
Okay. Any other successes at this list? I just heard a great
The arts.
budget.
The arts.
The arts.
That's there.
Focus on
I
the
got
arts.
that.
There.
You got that on there? We'll add it again. I heard a very impressive budget
Fiscal.
presentation this morning.
A strong budget reserve.
These are all things that candidates look for.
They are.
I also think the in addition to our budget reserves that we have kept strong, the condition of our schools is very, very good.
Capital.
And
Wait a minute.
I would think that we have in place our own police force that are trained in staffing all of our schools.
Okay, trained police force.
Bridget or Eric?
I was infrastructure.
Community support. I said community involvement before, but then I started thinking about the fact that we have a millage community support.
That's what
Oh yeah, our referendum support. Yeah.
Well, that wasn't last year, but
Okay, no, at millage and sales tax.
right.
How about we've been an A district for 15 years?
Okay, 8 district.
More than that?
16 now? 2004 to 19, 16.
And
Don't we
only
pay our
30
teachers the most?
And only 35 points from being the top district in the state.
Yep.
Yes.
35 points. That's all you need to be number one.
Do we no longer
With-
have the highest starting salary?
50% of our kids on free and reduced lunch, and the others one has 29%. That makes a big difference.
Competitive wage and benefits?
Don't put it in.
Okay. Any other ones?
I think we've got two very exceptional schools. The Pine View School is, always rated one of the best in the nation, and then our Oak Park for ESE students.
Oak Park for
Is that bad?
I don't think you heard it.
Competitive wage and benefits.
emotionally and
For students with disabilities, and then
Fabulous
competitive.
CTE.
Competitive wage and benefits.
Yes.
And benefits is okay with the benefits.
Okay. And then
Go ahead,
career
Jane.
technical.
Career and technical excellence.
Yeah.
And involvement with the community, the corporate community.
That's in my collaborative. I bundled mine at the beginning, innovation and collaboration.
You try to get too broad.
Just talking about Ron about that this week.
Boy, very impressive. That covers quite a few of them. And again, these we will everything that we do here we'll go ahead and summarize for you and get it back to you. But there are some wonderful successes that you have accomplished, and again, that will be very attractive to anybody who applies, because I believe that this is not only one of Florida's highest performing districts, probably across the entire nation too. The next item we have is talk about what is projects that you are currently working on or that are in progress. I'm just going right by them. We've talked about successes. What is actually kind of an ongoing projects that you're working on right now?
strategic plan.
And enhancing our equity policies.
Okay, there you go. Okay, we're working on.
Wait, we're going to lead I'm serious. We'll lead the state and
State-of-the-art equity plan.
on projects.
We don't have that yet. We're working.
but that's what we're working on.
Our best people.
Okay, we're working on an equity plan. Okay,
Trying to think what the right word is. Like
Strategic plan.
modernize or
strategic plan is going to be coming up, and we'll update that.
We don't have one.
Right.
audit committee.
We've got one that's
The plan will be updated. And I know when you get it done, as Ms. Corcoran said, it's going to be tied right to that budget.
2 generational learning for elementary students and their parents. That's kind of a broad brush, but
Generational learning,
that works for summer learning and
learning for students and parents.
I think this might go on the other
Yes.
one, but I think it's important. And I know we said police force, but I think safety and security is broader than that, including our IT and all of that. And I think we have some pretty advanced elements there. So if you add
That's
that,
real good.
you can add that.
Good. Okay.
Or I mean, safety and security is ongoing and it's broad, but even people commonly think just the hard infrastructure or the police force, but even the cybersecurity, the IT infrastructure, those are things that
That's really
huge.
too.
But I think that goes on our successes. I don't know that those are, it is constantly an ongoing project,
Because we're looking at new things.
but
What about that data management that we have?
The dashboard?
Data dashboard, where
That's
Transparency on the other one.
Going.
our data and analytics team's pretty.
Data dashboard?
So for me, it's unfinished business is lifting the lowest quartile. That's an unfinished business.
Okay.
And since you brought it up, Mr. Vogel, becoming number 1 in the state. That's another unfinished business.
Okay. Lifting the lower quartile. Becoming number 1 in the state.
That's unfinished business.
Okay.
Right?
We're doing something with pre-K, full-day program for pre-K at certain Title I schools. We're only doing that at one, but we'd like to do it at others if we can figure a way of funding it.
Full-day pre-K at title,
At Goshio.
At Goshio Elementary, you might just put Goshio.
that's G.
GOCIO.
Okay, any other ongoing, so a new superintendent comes in and these are the projects that are in place, the board has set them as a priority, you'll probably put some of these in the strategic plan in some way. Anything?
Zero-based budgeting.
Zero-based budgeting, okay, good.
Good one.
Nice. That's not going well.
As we work through the process, what we normally like to try to do is determine the key areas. For example, we looked at, you had a tradition of excellence, make sure excellence extends to all students. We're talking about closing the achievement gap, internal and external relationships, anything in that area that's ongoing or anything you're working with on that area? Anything else
Aren't we
ongoing?
up there with closing the achievement gap?
Yes,
Sorry,
we have that.
It's up there, right?
Yeah,
I thought
okay.
I had done that. So.
Okay, good. Okay, what about long-term? What about anything long-term that are priorities?
Building
Okay, we'll talk about that. Long-term priorities, okay.
building an elementary and middle school.
Okay.
In the southern part of the county.
And middle.
Middle.
Building new elementary.
A new K-8.
So are we rewriting this? Is that what we're doing, is getting
What we're doing is
information to
We're
rewrite
getting
this?
ideas for this, correct. Right, and this, we're going to update. That's what we wanted to,
I kind of like what's already here.
well, that's good. That's why I have it there, because there's things that are probably going to stay that are actually in here right now, but we don't want to just take it for granted, because things have changed in the last few years.
So it's building a new K-8.
Okay, K-8.
K-8.
That's one school, and that's going to be in Middle or South County?
Middle.
Yes, middle.
Middle County, okay. Okay.
Updating the theater at Booker High School.
Okay.
Capital projects.
Yeah.
Like longer.
Theater at Booker High School, update.
Zero-based budgeting is also a long-term project. I don't know. A lot of these overlap.
That's a long-term priority, so.
These things don't seem
Okay.
to bubble up higher than
Anything about, anything else long-term?
Working on new career and technical opportunities, such as nursing and IT at our technical college.
At Technical College?
Long-term project.
One thing that's happening now, the state has come up with a new review of all the career technical to make sure they're meeting job standards in the community. So that's going to be a big deal too when they're doing that. Okay, new CTA? Excuse me, I'm sorry? Okay. Okay, anything long-term, any long-term outlets? What about growth? Is there efforts planning for growth or?
Yeah, a lot of
Big growth?
the new construction.
Okay, other new
Well, I
construction?
mean, we have the building, the K8, there's 2 projects we're preparing and building and evaluating for growth. I mean, those are,
Okay, good.
I think that falls into what Caroline was talking about. But the K8 seems to be
Okay.
especially high interest one for many people.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's a great area,
That's a
yeah.
real big one there. Anything else? Yeah, and take a look at this too, because this is really excellent. And it's too easy though to just go ahead and say, hey, we the same ones we had because things have changed. But I want to use that because it's excellent. Okay, are there any educational trends that that we need to prepare for, or if you're looking at any particular trends?
Best standard, right?
Okay, there you go.
New standard.
The new standard.
New standards. New standards. Okay, trends and,
Friends. I thought you said friends.
okay, did I hear a new? Okay, okay, new standards?
Best standards, yeah.
Best standards?
New best standards.
Updated.
Which I told her they originally were going to call it the OK standard.
I thought that was
That's
a
my
really
joke.
funny joke.
Somebody else says that.
I thought it was
They
funny.
got it from me. You heard it here first.
Now, this is a huge deal when they change the standards. We don't-
Yep.
Okay, okay. What, anything other emerging trends that you can think of? Standards, anything else in education is trending? Okay, so that's the
There
big,
are in the budget stuff, Mitzi.
okay. That's the big one right there.
Trend.
Okay,
Maintaining competitive, attracting schools to our district managed schools. How about?
okay. So competition.
I think I heard that inferred, so if you flip the script,
It was definitely inferred.
Maintaining.
continuing to maintain competitive, attractive to our district managed schools.
Competitive?
Competitive programs, I don't know, whatever you want to say that. Well, district managed.
District man.
Tradition.
District managed, is-
Program.
there's the lot.
At district managed schools, okay.
What trends are there out there right now as far as the budgets are concerned? Because there are trends.
Mitzi.
I mean, there is, there's more accountability
Wait,
requirements.
Mental health and social emotional learning.
Yep.
Well,
Oh,
there's- yeah.
and the safety and security stuff.
Okay, social emotional learning,
Yes.
okay.
That's a big one. That's part of
Parent
it.
rights.
I'm sorry?
No, I get it. I get it.
Okay, that's a big one.
Increased safety and security.
Okay. I want to get scorecards up. Okay, and you were saying more accountability
Increased
and
accountability.
increased accountability in terms of budgeting and so forth?
Financial
Finan-
accountability.
increased
Well-
auditing?
We love auditors.
No, it's just financial accountability.
There's a new
more
gas
measures.
standard on debt, right?
There's just more requirements now. You get an audit finding, you have to rectify it within a certain amount of time. You didn't have to before. Much more transparency requirements.
Okay, increased transparency?
Financial transparency.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we want the trend to be everything's transparent, but. Wow, that makes a lot of noise. And numbers.
Okay, excellent. So those are kind of the trends that we're facing here in Sarasota County, and also. Okay, now, next, we want to talk about roles and relationships. And so on your sheet, I have several of those listed, and I'd just like to see how we feel about those relationships and what relationships we're happy with, what relationships need to be cultivated with a new superintendent coming in, what should be that area of focus. So maybe I'll start out with, the first one is congressional delegation.
To me, one of our biggest partners outside of this is the philanthropic community of foundations, big donors.
Yes.
They have a bigger impact than most of these other
Yes.
people on here.
So that's I'm going to add that because that's not on there. That's very.
Yes, especially uniquely in Sarasota, I would think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but not-
And then I think because of the makeup of the demographics here and the retirees, we have our relationship with the retirees and the volunteerism within the community and people coming back to work for second jobs is, I mean, having that relationship with the community is a big deal. Not just helping out the referendum, but also being engaged and being mentors and volunteering in the schools. I mean, it's multifaceted.
Yeah, I think we get more bang for the buck working with them than we do with the congressional leader, because
Right.
our funding from them is so small.
Yeah, I'd make the argument that those two groups are bigger than all these other groups combined.
You're right.
Yeah. Relocating retirees, and you're successfully able to engage a lot of those people.
Right.
Is your
Not only engage them, we engage them, but we also get their
Recruit.
support. Right, recruit them, but we also get their support financially. So there are places in the Panhandle where they can't get the referendum passed because they're full of retirees who are on a fixed income who won't vote to get them a referendum, but here in Sarasota County, we're able to do that, even though we have a high share of retirees. And the fact that we're able to experience that dichotomy in a positive manner is helpful to the school district.
I think we have to work on the relationship with our union too.
Really? All right.
Okay.
Well, we're not all in the same,
Okay.
pocket anymore.
I don't want to lose this one because I think this is really important. And I've read articles in the Sarasota Magazine where they talked about how people relocate here and then they're re-engaged here in some way. And I think you hit the nail on the head. That is exemplary because that does not often happen. And I think on your last millage, one of the parts of your community that had a very low student population
Right,
had the
Longboat.
highest
Longboat
score.
Key.
Okay.
Longboat Key, yep.
That's amazing.
Right.
That's amazing. So those opportunities are there. Okay, now I'm not going to mess.
I agree with Ms. Brown that the relationship with the union.
We're out of turn. Okay, we're going to work. That's one relationship we need to improve and work on. Okay.
I'm just saying, it's like
I think we also have to work on and improve our minority relationships with the both the Hispanic community and the African American community. I don't know that we've got good ties with those leaders. Not so much the leaders, but
With the Hispanic,
community.
African American community. See, all of these areas find their way, our intent, into the surveys that you send out.
Yeah,
That's why we take all these things. We try, so we don't just try to use a boilerplate. We try to really hone in on what are the priorities of this district, or where those.
well, one of the things that I was looking at, like the one that came out from Martin County. I mean, there were so many on it. I'm like, Jesus, that's too many. I much preferred the Volusia County one that just had a few. I mean, I think when it goes pages.
See, that's what we want to try to do. When we get all of this information and try to pull it together, that we'll try to go ahead and give you some ideas, and then you take it from there and move it forward. So it's not a boilerplate from what we do. It's based on, that's why we do this, we like to do this before we even talk about the process. That's why we're doing this first. Okay. Any other relationships that we need to work on, or how are they? What about county government?
Yep.
Those county commissioners.
Shoot in over here on that.
Well, I think just all the local governments,
Okay.
you know,
Are we talking about working on or maintaining or?
Right, that's what I'm asking you.
meet monthly.
yeah, we meet monthly, and
So those relationships are pretty solid?
Yeah.
Okay,
You can say continuation of,
okay,
there's a certain need to have them.
okay, right.
and I think we're pretty solid with the business community too.
Getting there.
We got some work to do.
Yeah, it's those accountants, you know, we just can't get them on our side.
Yeah.
Accountants.
And I'm a CPA.
We thought you were going to count.
Okay.
Okay.
Different.
Solid relationship.
There's a difference, right, Nancy?
Sir, I
Oh, yeah.
saw you were secret.
I made
There's a
that mistake.
difference.
So
Nancy's nodding her head yes.
Faith-based community?
Yes,
Good there.
we're just talking about that we have very little input from the faith-based community.
Ministerial Association.
Sarasota Ministerial.
Yeah, but they're not,
They do a couple
But they're-
things a year, but
We could use a little bit more,
Ministerial Association. That'll cover it.
so maybe we need new superintendent needs to reach out to that association.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, those are some of the relationships there. What about internal relationships? Let's talk about a lot of these. The teacher association can be considered internal and external. Without a doubt. What about your foundation? I saw a request from the foundation to get somewhat involved in this, in the search process here. I think I saw that. What about the foundation?
Which foundation?
Ed Foundation.
Pardon me?
The Education Foundation.
What about the relationship with that organization?
Is it? I don't know. I'm an outsider.
You know, the Education Foundation, I think, is doing more than they've ever done
Yeah.
before, but we're not as close as we used to be.
Well, the Education Foundation is doing more than before, but we're also paying more to the Education Foundation for what they do.
Okay,
What?
so-
I didn't know we paid.
okay. Maybe we need to have a conversation about
Yes,
goals with the
yes,
goals with them. I'm not,
yes.
somebody talk about common goals. So that's relationship. We need to build common goals.
Are you attending their meetings now?
No, I'm never invited.
Well, I think
I've never
we have to
received
get on the
an
list, because
agenda.
maybe,
Work on a relationship.
I just
'Cause I know I had to-
official member.
I had to go forward, because we're supposed to be, the chair is supposed to be invited.
officio
The
members
chair
of the board.
and the superintendent.
Work on a relationship area?
This is a relationships. We need to build common goals. Is what it is.
Okay, yeah, you might want to.
Yeah.
This is a build.
Apparently, we need to work on that.
Pardon?
Apparently, we need to work on that one.
Okay, but build, right, that's what I'm hearing. And that's what we come in. And one thing I'm really happy about, I think we've had pretty much consensus on everything we put up here too. Which
Yeah, I haven't heard
it's
any-
really good. But when we go into this search, it's really good. Okay.
What about like principal? I mean, I know they have the
That's not
SBA.
right. That's right. Administrative staff. What about, is there an association of principals?
Yeah, there's SBA and
It's called school-related.
school.
What about?
School-based
SBA.
administrators,
Okay, one at a
SBA,
time.
school-based
Wait.
administrators.
There's school SBA and SDA. So there's school district
Do me a favor,
administrators.
three of you were
School-based.
talking at the same time, one at a time.
SBA,
Yep,
school,
base administrator.
okay,
And then there's SDA, which is school district administrators.
okay. What about those organizations?
Good relationship, I think, very good.
Okay.
And then
We need to keep those
the
people,
I know who the president is.
and then the SCTA is already on there, right?
Yeah.
And then what about the police
What about
IUPA
union, IUPA?
okay.
from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
So those are really, okay, police. We talked about the Teachers Association, and
So
they
they're on
represent the
there?
support, so we have
Yeah, they
that,
represent
okay.
And then IUPA is the police union.
Support. Okay, and then the police?
Police union.
Police union. Okay. And those are all important relationships that need to be cultivated.
Or maintained, of course. Yeah, either or. Yeah.
Is that where we'd put the parents and the students and?
Yes? Definitely, we've got that. We've got one of that for that, absolutely, the parents. But do you have a PTA?
We have PTOs.
We have
PTOs at the schools?
sort of, but they're not.
There's not.
SDM is better.
SDM is,
SDMT.
SDMT.
But that's
what is that?
staff.
School what is that stand for?
School-based management?
Shared decision
Shared
making.
decision-making teams.
Well, but that's not
staff. No,
placement of
that's-
PTO. That's not do
Staff.
No.
That's it.
That's
Maybe
it.
someone could tell me what that is.
It's a school-based.
It's how you decide how you
Wait,
spend
wait,
your
wait.
school
Shared
internal
decision-making
funds,
or school?
right?
Shirley. One at a time, please.
Okay.
Anyone want to answer that question?
So the shared decision-making teams are made up of staff at the school and administrators, and they work and make joint decisions. They create interview committees for determining staff, et cetera.
Okay.
And there
So
are
it's
parents on it
Sure.
too?
Mic
No.
on?
It used to be.
No.
Shared
No,
decision-making?
not that one.
SAC is what
You're thinking of SACs, and that might not be a bad idea.
School Advisory Committee.
School
SAC.
advisory.
You have a school advisory committee?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. And also, when you're thinking about all these groups, if you internal and external, when you decide on who is going to be on, if you decide to use a citizens advisory committee, to help in this process, be thinking of organizations and whether you want to involve internal or external, whatever you want to do too. So be thinking.
I've had people call in and send me emails, and Kathy is compiling a list of those people who want to be
I could send you some names. I didn't know you were compiling them.
who want to serve on it.
Well, we haven't really started that process yet, but people are already,
Yep.
Just like
going ahead and doing that. Okay, that's good. What about students? I see you have a student
yes.
representative.
That varies
You have
every
a student council.
board meeting.
Okay,
that would be great. I would love to see student. Yeah.
relationship.
Add
with students.
students on there, but it would be great to have
And the superintendent has a student council.
With students, and you like that I think that's one of the most effective things that is to make sure you're reaching out to the students and having visibility of board members and superintendents out in the schools with students. So you have a superintendent's
Council.
council,
Advisory
Student council.
council, you call it?
Student council, yeah.
and that's composed of representatives from the high schools.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. That's good. I think we've really covered some of those. And all these lists are works in progress. We'll summarize them all, and board members will get them. We're kind of brainstorming to kind of get us started and thinking on it, because we'll all be putting it together as we go. The last section, and in fact, it's one of the pillars now of FSBA, I believe. They've added a fifth pillar, and that's board superintendent relationships. So maybe let's spend a few minutes, because we're
good.
working pretty well on time,
We're good.
and talk about expectations of board members on board superintendent relationships.
I think we need to, with that new strategic plan, come up with goals and expectations that are, shared goals and expectations. And I guess that would be for student achievement.
I'd like to think of it as a 6-member team with the superintendent. You don't, Bridget's saying no.
No, I think that's where I think there's a mutual respect for the various roles. That is far more important than looking at a 6-member team, because 6-member team, I believe, has put us in a challenging spot. There are 2 different functions. Superintendent oversees the entire organization as its CEO. The board is its oversight body. So working together collaboratively but mutually respecting the different roles is the best way, I think, is far more important. But
That would be great if we followed that model, but we don't. And that's where we get in trouble.
We did
correct.
We didn't.
Correct. We agree.
That's the big part. So the mutual respect of the differing administrative and the board role. So 6-member team. This is a 5-member team.
Right. Because that would imply that I'm also I have the same authority as the superintendent, which I don't.
No, I just meant 6-member team working together for the common good of
Right.
the district.
Right,
That's
but
what
the
I'm
roles,
about.
but our
The roles
roles
are different.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, I tried to put out goals and responsibilities of the board and the superintendent, but you all poo-pooed it, so I'm not going to try and do that again.
I think we need to spell out the, what kind of communications we want,
Okay.
and the chain of command protocols. Like if there's a shutdown at a school, do we want to know about it? If there's an accident on a bus, or if there's going to be, somebody presenting a proposal to the board, and then come to find out that the next day, the district is saying, no, we don't really want that, and pulling it. I mean, I think better communication needs to be out there. And
Yeah, one of the things that I mentioned when we were presenting is that's something that I feel like we offer to the boards and the new superintendent when the leadership team
The
comes
transition.
in. And we just did one in one of the districts. We just finished a search on it. It was very, very successful. After the board and superintendent had been working together for a couple of months, we were called in there. We really was. I think that's really important. These have to be defined.
yeah.
Well, the question is that defined early on? Because I believe that there are, as I've spoken to other people in the different areas of the state, different communication styles or different leaders are very different. So some superintendents, better for worse, I'm not necessarily saying this, but they want board members to only directly work with them and not other members of staff. And then there are other superintendents who say, you feel free to reach out to the members of my cabinet, just keep me in tune. I think there's just different leadership styles. So
Right.
I think being aware of what those preferred styles are important for us to know. I mean, based on what we're looking for as well.
Absolutely, and I think that's an area that is usually the first on the table.
Before they're selected.
Before they're selected.
Okay.
That's one of the things too, because you're absolutely right. And I think that's really important. My leadership style is different than others, but that's very important. I think the openness of communication, and everybody needs to know that.
Okay.
And every board member has different opinions
Right.
and different ways they like to be communicated on. I think that's really important. So that's critical. We talked about chain of command. Emergency crisis protocols, you already mentioned that. Meeting operations, are you pretty satisfied with your workshops and the meetings that you're having and so forth? Is that process and that model going pretty well?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah, and I think general responsiveness is a big key
Okay, right.
for me.
We had one superintendent that would just answer the phone every time a call came in, and he was forever on the phone with different members who may have had different opinions, and then to get one that doesn't necessarily respond to an email or a phone call in a timely manner.
Yeah.
So there's a timeliness that you would want the response.
We want them to be able to do their job, but not.
Yeah,
There's a balance.
right.
What about on follow-up on items? Let's say something comes up. I saw your deputy, what's her title? She did a great presentation.
Krista.
Laura,
Krista.
I mean, I saw her.
Deputy CFO.
A board member had a question. She was writing it down, and you probably get an answer for that by the end of the afternoon.
It's going to catch on.
One model that I found really successful is, it would be Kathy or Linda in this case, but everything that is brought up as a question is recorded, and then it is logged, and then at the next meeting of leadership team, it's discussed, and then it's a follow-up, and the board members get that contact sheet back at the next monthly or so. So every item that comes up is followed up, and then all the board members get that information on it that it comes up. So, but anyway, those are protocols and things that are very important to, in the communication network, because That's why FSBA added that fifth pillar, because this is the big one right here. That's the one that is critical. And that is so critical to the success of the continued success of this organization. And when this district is #1 in the state and gets those 35 points, this is what it's going to take to get there, I believe. Okay, any other areas that...
One of the things how I handled that in previous years was if the board wanted something, I would just turn to Kathy and say, put that in the bucket list to make sure that it was kept and brought forward again, so that I didn't have to worry about it. Kathy had a list.
But even when we have the hearing of citizens, oftentimes what is brought up there, action is being taken on in the background, and we don't always hear back about it. Like the day out for the environment that they're looking at. I mean, so they're looking at how we can work that out, and then the other student who wanted the club at Pineview.
Well,
I mean, so they're looking at working with those kids. I mean, and I don't know offhand what other people bring up, but if a citizen brings something up, we can't talk about it then, but we'd like to know what happened afterwards. So so I would think I might even want more follow-up than what we're getting now.
Would that be like a superintendent's report?
Well, maybe we just get a report on it, just an email. I mean, I don't know.
Well, sometimes talking about it is easier than writing it down.
Those are the things that, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but it's really important that, the type of person that is selected for this job, that we're able to research the background to find out how much that follow-up is, that person has a track record of doing that. So that's really an important one.
I think this board is a need to know board, needs
Got it.
to know.
That's good. That's good.
I like data.
Carolyn.
That's good. Like
Jane.
data.
I do. They make
I was going to say, there's one district which will remain anonymous, who's, now if you have a question as a school board member, you have to actually type it into the computer, and it's logged into a special system. You don't actually ask the superintendent or any staff member about that question, and your answer will come back to you as though, you were going on to Amazon or something. But everybody gets the answer that way, and it doesn't supposedly involve the wrong person or take more time to research or decide who's going to give the answer. Some of the school board members are not happy with this particular situation, I will tell you that, but that's what they've been doing for a while.
Well, throughout this process we'll do that, but it's real important that, and what I'm really pleased with, we have a consensus of everyone here as we've gone through these items, and I think this is really important as we're moving forward on our search.
Yeah.
Anything else? Yes.
What I meant by needs to know board is hands-on board.
Well,
That's different than needs to know.
well,
They're very-
I'm going to go ahead and add that, because need to know is important too.
hands-on and needs to know it very different.
Okay.
You're hands-on.
I like to have information if I'm taking a vote.
Really? So you want to make an
I'll take the hands-on.
You want to make an informed decision? Okay, that's novel.
Outside of that, there's no hands-on.
Okay. What about this?
Eric,
Informed decision. It's odd. Yeah.
oh no,
Surprises.
hate them.
Kindergartners and first graders love surprises. Board members and superintendents don't.
No.
Yeah.
Okay?
If they come in boxes with a bow,
No, even then.
Okay, good. I just want to make that a point, because I think that is very critical to the relationship that board members and superintendents have. Okay, what have I missed?
on both sides.
On both sides, absolutely, on both sides. What have I missed?
God.
Okay,
Good job.
we've got a lot of data in a very short period of time, okay? And I think all of us are together on this, so that's good. Now, let's go to the next part of this session, and we're going to actually get into this. we'll go ahead and summarize all these to the best that we can. And like I said, this is a work in progress. Okay, now, next, what I've done is I don't have an ending date on this, but these are some of the things that we're going to have to address as we go through the search process.
He's passing out a paper on things we have to address as we're going through the search process for those of you who want to know what we're doing and they can't hear.
Hey, Bill.
But he wasn't on the recording anymore. So I'm just filling in the blank.
I have a quick question though, because, and I mentioned this, and you said ending date twice, but, and I guess, and I don't want to go out of turn, but there was an ending date on the contract, so I just wanted to address.
We did. We are changing that.
Okay, because okay, I had highlighted.
I talked to Mr. Hardy, and we're changing that date to whatever date we decide we're going to finish the search.
Okay, because I know that there's been inferences that it's not. I know it's not going to be never ending. That's not my goal.
Correct.
But I don't want things to be in correctly. And I know there had been timelines, but and then the timeline tightness. So I want to make sure. Because again, that's the copy I have.
Mr. Hardy.
I had a discussion with Ms. Messina, who's in charge of the contract from the FSBA side.
Okay.
And discussed that you would make a decision at the workshop, discuss a date that you want put in the contract. She didn't want it, and I think this is reasonable, that there be no date.
Are there typically dates
because, that could
Correct.
lead to them being obliged to do multiple searches over years, literally.
Right.
There's no end date. So I can understand that from her perspective, but what the date is, she said she was flexible, and once you all come up with that time period, then that can be put in the contract, and we can get that to you to vote on this afternoon.
Do we have a date on it in the prior contract, I wasn't able to pull it, so.
I don't know.
So the prior search, we started roughly I wasn't here, but we started on February and we ended in November.
Right.
No,
February.
I don't want to do that. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. So
no.
I'm just saying I'm pointing it out for time. I don't have a problem. I want the search to be done when we get it right. That's when I want the search to end. So I'm just doing it for purpose of getting time. And so then I started looking when I saw this. I started looking at other searches where how long they have been going on, and all of them have been going on longer than this time frame would be. So my first question is, how did you come up with this date? How was this date determined? Because this is a rather, if you look at all the other FSBA, at least open searches or searches done, none of them are being done in 3.5 months. So how did this date?
I have something to add to that. Some of the searches that FSBA has been involved with lately are with superintendents who were elected and are going to appointed, and that has a sunset of November. So there's something, for example.
So there was some of like that, but there were also some that were people leaving, like Indian River. He was leaving, and they're doing the search, and so they did the interim. They went from like May to the end of June, so that one was very short. And I know you were involved, and you had actually said that we could do it, but it was aggressive. But I didn't see any other searches that you have done that were 3.5, 4 months long. So to put one in to us that's so much shorter than all the other ones you've done, including the last one you did with us, I'm just trying to understand how this date came about.
The ideal time to hire a superintendent and have him on board is by July 1st.
But who says that? Because even Andrea Messina and Dr. Vogel, it goes more to the right person is far more important.
Well, I actually wasn't finished. Actually, Madam Chair, I wasn't finished, and I started the floor. And then you.
I thought you were. Sorry.
No.
You can talk forever.
Actually, I had a question, and typically questions come back with an answer. So, ending in a question isn't ending your discussion, because ending in a question, it's historically anticipates an answer.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that was clarified. So my first question was, given the fact that this timeline is shorter than your historical timeline, I'm trying to, and it's half the time of our last search, why was this date picked when it doesn't jive with history of FSBA and the history of Sarasota County?
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you, but I do know that whatever.
They can't hear you.
I don't know the answer to that myself, but whatever timeline the board would like to insert would be fine. And normally, when we are selected, the board gives us a time for that search, but I know that didn't happen last time. So we're open, very open-minded. I think Mr. Hardy talked to Mrs. Messina, and we're very open to whatever date with it.
So last time we, it took 9 months, and I'm not saying this is going to take 9 months, but I hope our attorney would want to protect us, and so our position should be we want as much time as possible to give us the flexibility, but not so long that they're going to say no to. But I had concerns last time that one of the things that happened was we had community forums to ask the community what kind of qualifications they wanted as the superintendent, and then that information was brought back to the board that was used to develop a job description.
Right.
And yet we did community forums after it was posted, and I don't want to do that next time because that's basically telling the public it's a dog and pony show. We actually did a forum the night that we had announced that it had already been of a meeting that had already been had been online, so the job description actually went up before the board had agreed on the job description, and so that's what happened last time. And so I don't want a dog and pony show. I want the community to know that their input matters. And so if we're going to go out and get job descriptions from the community, I don't want to shorten that by shortening their input. And so if they're going to give us qualifications, I want to make sure there's plenty of time so those job qualifications are meaningful to us and are used in the decision-making process, and that we have time to plug those in to the conversation the board has, so that when we eventually do come up with a job description, we have all the community input from all those entities, and we don't have a dog and pony show where we literally had community forums after it was already posted, and that it was posted before the district came up with the job description. Neither one of those two events do I want to see us have on our timeline to occur. But that did happen.
Aren't we doing an online survey?
Correct. Well, that's how I wanted to go through it. I think I don't have any problem with that. Depending on the timelines available, we're certainly willing to do that, and we do that in most of our circumstances, depending on what the board does. Would like to do.
We do what when most of the time. Sorry,
what
because
we'd like to do.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Shirley.
I'm sorry.
He does community forums.
first.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think in reality, we look at what the qualifications were the last time. We gave them some ideas on what we want today. I think to put too much emphasis on holding back for the community to give us more input when we as a board understand what we need in a superintendent, whereas somebody out there that may be involved in the schools, may be the head of the PTO, but doesn't understand the dynamics of a school board. I'm thinking that, yes, I would like to make us be having these interviews in May and get somebody hired by June. Perhaps what we could do is move these dates up, and rather than work at the board workshop on the third Tuesday, maybe have special board workshops on the first Tuesday so that we can move these things up and get them going. I know that we really need somebody in place, in June if possible. I mean, I really think that's important. But what I found the last time, and we had the community there and they all filled in cards and they all did this, but I don't know that many of those cards were read by the board members and all of that. I mean, so to say that we're going to hold this process up for a whole month or more to get community involvement, where I think to some extent they're just going to back up some of the things that we're saying, because I think the things that we need in a superintendent, because we're the ones working with them, are almost more important. And you're going to tell me somebody from the community is going to say they want something else other than integrity and financial and education goals? I don't know that it's, I can see, yes, they might come up with something new, but I want to move it up. And if we have to have workshops on the first Tuesday, I think we ought to do it.
I agree with you. Bridget?
Well, I have no problem as far as the additional meeting. I think one part that's really important, if you look at the current state of affairs, and especially in this community, is really building the trust. And I think that really underscores the ability for whoever comes and fills that seat to be successful, in addition to the board weighing in, because at the end of the day, we are certainly the final ones that make that decision. But I think that in order for that superintendent to have the community support, to have the people rally around them, and it's so important for the community to be heard. And you're right, they're probably statistically, I'm sure you would say this across the 67 counties you've done, there are a lot of similarities, but shutting that out and assuming that, I do not think that sets the tone for that superintendent to be successful, in my personal opinion.
Bill?
We have that built in exactly like you're talking about. The last meeting, and I think it might help if I go through this to see where we are.
Please.
That is reordered based on the communication at the last meeting. And we built that in, but maybe if I go through this and just talk through it, and then we can go back.
Thank you. Is your mic on?
Yes, ma'am. It is. I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay. The first, February 2020, and again, these are all just timelines to look at. We talked about we did the pre-search interview. We're just going through the timeline now. As far as qualifications and contract terms, we do have, before they're finalized, we do have the community forums built in, and I'll go through those. But the good starting point is to look at what you used last time. And I may make a comment on that. The qualifications that you put down are pretty open on that, because it does allow, and I'll just mention as I go through this here, that it does allow that someone who is a non-traditional candidate to apply. So just be aware of that. Sometimes boards would like that in there, or they don't like that in there, but it does allow a non-traditional candidate. So that's some additional information we could get from the community forum or the survey. Like I said, as we go through this, what we'll try to do is put some of this information on the staff survey, and if you decide to do a survey, with the community, we do a community survey. If you do a staff survey, we can add those on there. Second, we start talking about the online survey, and I think I've heard that you like the idea of doing an online survey for the community, and I heard from the last time maybe a staff survey, and I heard that maybe we want to limit some of those responses where people would select some of the best, a smaller number based on a lot of what we talked about here, plus some additional ones. And I tend to move through a little bit fast, so your job is to stop me.
I did not hear what you just heard.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't hear that we wanted to do just on. Were you saying you're just going to do online surveys?
No.
Okay.
That's one thing we're going to do. I've heard you want to do that. And then we're additional. Okay. We're going to go ahead and that's a little bit ahead here, but we're going to look at community forums, like we did last time. But then I heard last time I was here that you were looking at internal focus groups possibly. So that would involve internal groups, and you'd have to decide which internal groups you'd like us to meet. When we've done that, we've sometimes had a community forum maybe at 6 o'clock, and then maybe an internal focus group if it's involving those people that work for the organization maybe earlier in the day. So they don't have to come back if they don't want to, or whatever times work.
And that would include, the liaison listening to that. Like, if I think internal, you would have almost like what we said, district administration, school-based administration, classified, and instructional. And would that be something from the FSBA
We would have to what I envision to do, because Ms. Corcoran's going to be my main contact, is I would maybe after hearing this, we would say these are some of the organizations that came out of the internal groups. Maybe the Teachers Association would have a separate forum. All these are open to people go to the community forums. And the protocol that we've used very successfully is one that we are able to engage all people in the process. It's worked out pretty well before. And then we take capture all of the responses from those people that are at the forum. I do it the next day. Board members have that information, and it's more information that we have when we finalize what we put in the brochure. So we want to do that. Application process, just a comment there. The last time the applications came through the district, we would recommend that they go to FSBA this time.
Yes.
Okay. We didn't do that last time.
No.
We would recommend that. So those are some of the things that, I'm hearing a nod on that right now. Advertising venues, we would do national advertising groups that we do, and I think we've been able to keep our budget within line. And we also have predominantly Hispanic organizations we advertise with, and also African American organizations that we do. We also have a communication line with Broad Foundation that we were able to get, and sometimes we get non-traditional candidates that have been through their training programs. Then we would we would ask again, like we did last time, which was very popular, to have your IT department put together a online portal. So, and you could click on Martin County, for example, right now, or any of them. It's right on the after it's superintendent search portal, and then all the information regarding dates, times, calendar is right on that. And then when the applications start coming in, as they come in, they're posted. And what we usually do is get the
Their actual applications are posted online.
Yes.
So we can view them, public
Yes.
can view them.
Yes. And as soon as we decide the advertising period and someone puts in an application, they are posted. They're given a number and they're posted. All their information. What's posted is their cover letter, their resume, and their reference letters, and their transcripts without Social Security numbers. We do all that. When we're doing it, we do it all ourselves. So everybody can click on those, and it's really helpful because you have them right up front.
Bill?
Yes, ma'am.
How does that affect someone who doesn't want their district to know that they're looking for a job?
Okay. We have, right. I think that's a good way to say it. We have and we're probably going to put it in, what says here, all resumes, applications, other materials submitted are subject to Florida Public Records Act. Resumes, applications, other material cannot be held in confidence. Now, so we have that on all our sheets. Sometimes people do not read that, and it causes a little backlash, but we believe in open communication between boards and superintendents.
And if there had to be a time that they were looking for a job, this would be it, because this is the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
So a lot of people are looking, or have told me that they're looking because this would end their year.
That's right. But we found that, we encourage, and in Florida, everybody knows who's applying and who's,
And that's a really good point. I'm sorry, Mia. We talked about this last time, and I think this is really important as more and more, even just the committee for, if we have a community committee, as you mentioned, you're forwarding those over, but board members discussing if any superintendent potential interest reaches out, that we're not having any conversations, dissuading, persuading, anything of the sort. Is that all agreed to, and that has been agreed to? There's been no
That's agreed to.
breach of that? Okay, because that's very important to I think, all of us.
I've not talked to anyone who is interested or isn't.
that is really, it's really a good practice, and what we always recommend, if someone comes up to you, or if you want to nominate someone, just have them call me, and I will kind of take it from there.
Perfect.
And we really have had, actually, in any of our searches, we really haven't had that be an issue. Yes.
Can you reach out to the people who were the finalists last time? I mean, it's only been 3 years, and maybe those same people may not see the ad, but they obviously had an affinity to Sarasota 3 years ago.
I'm sure they're watching.
Absolutely.
One is retiring, and the other is still in St. John's.
Yeah, I will definitely
who'd
do
you
it.
say? I'm sorry?
Mark Porter is retiring and moving to North Carolina.
And then you said the other one?
But the other person is still in St. John's.
Well, can you reach out to that person?
Absolutely.
All right, thank
And
you.
one of the things about us, when it comes to Florida, people interested, because we do so much training with superintendents, that I can pretty much tell you. In fact, I got a text last night. Someone's going to call me back at 3 today. I mean, everybody. If it's in Florida, we pretty much know every single person that is available. Even some superintendents that are applying for jobs that would like to move too. I mean, we recently had the Clay County superintendent selected in Hillsborough. We didn't do that search, but there's a lot more movement now.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where my personal concern was, just making sure, because I know that's the culture and people are paying attention. That's good. But because this is a collaborative decision-making process, wanting to make sure that it's not being steered or any influences are being done, and that everything be channeled through you guys and then equally back to us.
Absolutely. That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So we definitely will do that, and we'll have, there may be internal candidates to apply and others. That's why when there's internal candidates, that's why we recommend receiving the applications, and then we go from there. But on that portal, everything is posted right there, and it makes it very nice for for the public, and it keeps it very transparent.
Excuse me a minute,
yes.
Bill. So, therefore, anyone who's really interested in the superintendency and the superintendent search has ample opportunity to go online and to research.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes to us the day before we make a decision and say, I didn't know anything about this, it's too bad.
Yeah.
Shirley.
I went through our calendar, and in March, we've got a March 3rd meeting, and then we've got spring break, and we don't meet again until March 24th. I think that's a good time. I mean, if we could maybe move that up, where instead of just saying we're going to release the online survey and then not do it until March 24th, that's a long time. I'm thinking maybe if we could do something at our March 3rd meeting so we could come up with what we want to do on that online survey, so that we could, because that's a big time frame that we've got there, and a lot of people are off work then, and if we could maybe do something on that, so that we're not tied to just that one board workshop a month, because that's a long time between the 3rd and the 24th. I think a lot of things can get done, and I also think it'd be frustrating for the public to say, oh, we're going to open this, but we're not going to do it for another month. I mean, I would like to be able, if we could meet on the 3rd and come up with those ideas.
When is spring break?
Spring break is, I think it's like the 14th or something like that.
Third week in March.
The 16th through 20th.
Yeah.
I looked at the calendar. What I was thinking too is we could actually do community forums and focus groups in March.
Yeah.
Work around the spring break, and we could push ourselves a little bit. But we probably, if we're going to come back with a survey on March 3rd, we're going to need some support from the staff too, because I want to make sure we kind of narrow it down like you're saying, but I want to make sure it's not me that's putting those items
Right.
on that survey.
But I also want to make sure we get it right the first time.
I agree.
Right.
So that's going to be up to this board to tell me which you want to do.
And I think the community really wants to be, involved when we get somebody too. I mean, to make sure that they're there then, so we can do the online survey, but I think where they're looking for more input is when we start narrowing it down. Mm-hmm. That's where I think they want more input.
Do you have the calendar for when we did it in 2016?
Yeah, I think I do.
I'm from a comparative standpoint, because we lived it. It gives me a little bit more context.
May and June? Was it May and June?
Yeah,
I
let's
missed
see.
that summer part.
We did the
Back a bit. because we-
Yeah, and I also think that we need to be keeping in mind that normally,
April, May. I got it.
Well, when was it?
Last time,
Can I get Kathy to make copies of it?
yeah,
Just her contact, it would help me a lot.
sure.
She's got to go over there to make copies.
Yeah, I've got
I know.
We have a copier here.
She can't be here and there at the same time. Is Linda
we
there?
did them in
Well, I think
April.
that in there, too.
We did it April 19th through 26th.
and normally we are not here in middle of June to the middle of July. I mean, I went and booked a trip to Africa
Last time.
the last week of June.
Rubbing in your awesome trips that
Well, I know, but it's like, I just.
Okay, but this has to take precedence, so.
If I can go ahead and continue. Okay, and we're going to get that calendar, but we did those in April from last year on that. Okay, then we really we look at job descriptions. If we had a job description last time, Mr. Hardy, I'm not sure if we decided to have a job description or not. Some boards use the statutes and others use a job description. There are pros and cons about job descriptions for superintendents, but that's something that we can talk about.
What did we do last time?
I don't recall exactly what we had, but I don't.
I think we have statutory language and then have a little bit more.
To be determined by board.
Yeah, and that's something we can talk about, and it's totally a preference with the boards. Some of the boards want to use the statutory language, and some want to do a job description. So.
But statutory language is challenging because you have elected and appointed superintendents as well. So
it is, but and I think there's reasons why boards don't want to do it, and there's reasons why they do want to do it. And I lean on the attorney because if it's too specific in the job description, then someone says it's not my job description.
they're saying that. I don't.
Well, it's never a problem until there's a problem.
Right.
Go ahead.
Certainly, the statutes list whether it's appointed or elected superintendent, the various
The basic
duties
constitute,
of one or the other. There have always been some level of duties in the contract with the superintendent,
exactly.
although there's also the kind of catch-all at the end. You can't violate the statutory duties in any event. So I don't know if there was a job description. I don't specifically recall one.
I don't either.
I don't know that one is really necessary. But
No, I don't think so. I think it's in the contract.
be determined by
every time you put something, as Dr. Vogel says, when you put it down, you could leave something out inadvertently, or it's just one more thing for there potentially to be an argument over.
Yeah, that's why I usually lean on the attorney on that one. But anyway, we always at least raise that.
We've got those qualifications that we're looking for too, or their qualities.
Yes.
And, like commands a deep knowledge of current educational research and use of data, demonstrates extensive knowledge of business, finance, and operations, builds trust through engagement with staff, community, and school board. I mean, they weren't the top ones last time, but I think we need to move them up and look at some of those, because I think and then I think the other ones models impeccable professional and ethical standards.
number one.
Yeah. Well, it was number one the last time too. So there you go.
Shirley, did you look at this one?
That's what she's
So she's
reading.
reading off of.
Models impeccable professional.
She was right. Number one.
standards.
Number one.
She's
We'll
reading
bold type that one.
Yeah, that one. But I no. In reality, I mean, they have to have a deep knowledge of current educational research and use of data, and they have to have extensive knowledge of the business and finance and operations, and they have to build trust through engagement with staff, community, and school board, and. Some of them even were talking about a sense of humor. I don't care if you have a sense of humor or not. I want to make this is what I care about. Yeah, we got enough of that.
I will say, as I recall last time reading the 49, and I know we had a committee that narrowed it down to 8, and then we went to 5, and then 3, and so on and so forth. But it was challenging, and it's impossible. And I think this probably is the case that all of them really did start to sound very much the same. Like all the cover letters were the same. I mean, and that's very similar in the private sector world, where you have some creative people who will stand out, but it's rare. Is that something you see? I mean, that's a challenge in my mind when you start to really filter through quality candidates. Does that? They all start looking on paper very much the same.
What the candidates will do, though, when they apply, is they will look at the qualities and they'll try to focus in on these qualities. So they'll attract the attention, and they'll try to have their resumes that they submit include these.
So, and maybe to that point of, I don't know. I mean, what is important to us is like demonstrate that in your cover letter vis-a-vis anecdotal or true evidence of, give us examples of I mean, X, Y, and Z, obviously.
Yeah, we want them to give us examples of that. 'Cause, well, and what you don't want to do is somebody who's got the same cover letter for a position in
which I believe
Vegas as they do in Sarasota.
So any way that you could guide that, because I found that to be challenging, and so if there's a way that we put that out there and almost request providing, and does that make sense?
It does, and it's excellent. And I can tell, I know the kind of the number one priority based on already what we're talking about. And they in their letter, we could say they need to submit documentation or evidence of this or something.
Yeah, some programming, even if it's like an educational innovative program that they were able to demonstrate, demonstrate results, or, I don't know how you models impeccable professional and ethical standards. I think, that one, I don't know how you'd have to, outside of some great references, if you will, right? I mean, and then you got to check the people who are giving the references. but still, I think that would be helpful. I just found that the 49 blended together. I don't know if you saw.
One time what I did is I went to Texas and went through a year's worth of newspapers to see if I could find anything on a superintendent.
Well, thank God we have Google now.
A whole year. I mean, I was nuts to do that.
But the research, I mean, that part's really important.
I didn't find anything.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. You just, no.
Anyway, but Eddie, I don't know if there's a way you could guide on that to help bring those forward.
And what is the purpose of the online survey? Last time it went live, and we got it on May 30th.
That was Eric's point.
We started later than we're starting now.
We had big gaps last time.
Big gaps. Yeah, we're not going to allow big gaps.
Just to update the board, if you go on our website, under job descriptions, there purports to be a job description for the superintendent, but it's not really a job description. It doesn't have duties or educational requirements. It looked like it was an announcement of the search.
Okay.
Because it talked about our superintendent was leaving and then gave contact information for FSC.
So maybe we need to update that.
Well, there's something.
That's interesting.
There was something there, but what I'm telling you is it's not a job description that says these are the duties, these are the educational requirements.
We need to have that match.
It's, right, so I don't think you have a job description, although you have something online.
Right.
What are you saying, Bill?
When we advertise it, the qualifications, that's probably what Mr. Hardy's talking about. When you define the qualifications, that's basically defining, the minimum qualifications for the job.
Okay.
So I think, and then, and that may have been our advertisement. We can take a look at it. But I agree with Mr. Hardy. I don't think we had a official job description.
No.
So then, after we get have our community forums and our internal focus groups, and we have our online survey, that's the first process that we gather community input. And we're very flexible for as many forums,
We did.
as you would like us to have, but those are the board would have to determine how many and where you'd like us to go and what groups you'd have to meet. I mean, I can suggest some, but this is where I would need to get that feedback from you.
We would need a north, south, and a middle county.
Sure. Yeah.
At minimum. 3.
I know last year I went to Northport and Booker, and then we have it on that sheet right there.
And you did Venice and Riverview.
And we did a Venice when we did an employee forum. We did do one.
We did do one last.
I think Riverview was the employee forum.
Yep, it was.
Yeah. But
we
I'm calling
that was the second. Maybe it was the second Riverview we had the Riverview one where there were community people there too, unless that was another one.
Right before we hired.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the SDC one, I think, no, wasn't it?
Yeah. So what I'll try to do is just go through this, and then I think what I probably would need to do is we'll take everything down that we have, and then Ms. Corcoran and I will work with Mrs. Zucker to try to finalize what we think everybody wants to do, and then you can work it. So we have something going after just getting your input today, if that sounds all right.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to finalize everything right now.
No, that sounds good.
We're not going to be able to do that. Okay, then after we have the focus groups that the board would like and the survey comes in, then we will finalize the qualifications for the brochure. The salary, and we'll talk about the salary. The last time our salary range was 185 to 225. I would say, based on the current, what's going on now, I would probably increase that to maybe 245 or so. I think Collier's up to that right now.
I have a question.
I'd say I'm just saying, based on Collier's up to 245. So,
So we say 200 to 245?
well, that's going to be a board choice. You could keep it the same.
Wait, Bridget is trying
So
to speak.
I think that, I mean, I certainly think that that'll attract more people. And one thing that I find, a lot of times we talk base salary, and then when you put all the kit and caboodle together, they are far beyond, and then $250,000+. And so, since what is, I mean, if I look at Miami-Dade and versus Hillsborough. I mean, Hillsborough is a large district, but Miami-Dade's huge. I mean, it's like operating a state. So, and where we fall within that, and so. But it's not just on the number of students and whatever. I mean, there's a variety of challenges that you want to overcome, and what there's expertise and how they can do that. So, what guidance? I understand you're saying at 245. That's base salary, not including any of the additional perks and benefits, which we Again, I'm going based on last one.
60,000.
It was, we have car allowance, you have full medical for family, all those other things. Those are negotiated into the contract,
Right.
which I'm understanding you guys would assist us with as our
Absolutely.
best practices. So, because as we financially quantify what can we afford, that's where I'd love to put the salary out there at a higher level, because to attract a high quality CEO. But I want to get a better sense of what that full picture is. Does everyone agree and understand my concern?
Can you do something like a minimum and then negotiable based on experience?
Well, yes, and the last time, for example, that's what you did, because you were at 185 to 225, and I think the superintendent was hired in at 185. And the last salary was 207 or so. So I don't think you'll ever really get to the top. The only reason I hit 245 was that's what Collier is paying now. And so that was the only reason I hit that high number. The superintendent in Volusia was just hired at 210. I think 310 in Hillsborough. Those are some different.
315.
Yeah, but I do want to point out, just to piggyback, is we just our taxable benefits that we provided him. Only the taxable benefits was $60,000. So even though he was getting paid $197, his W-2 said $250,000. Right,
But that is
there's
where-
benefit. That is compensation.
But you understand.
So if they're coming in with a maximum of 225, but what if
You thought I was done too,
What
again?
are the add-ons? You're talking to her, I'm talking to
Yeah.
No, I am talking to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, well, anyway, we're not going to solve this today, and I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to give you an idea for you to think about, because the add-ons are so hard because every contract is a little bit different. I can do an analysis of all the monetary value in all the contracts. I've got a check sheet if I can do that. But it adds, it can add up.
Upper hundreds of, Broward is over 120,000, I think, just in perks, though.
But that's something we'll have to decide, and I don't want to spring it on you. We'll have to decide right now. We have. But anyway, and we'll provide a chart that has all the latest salaries.
Yes.
But all
That would
they are
be
the
great.
base. So we'll get that to you.
Cavallo is worth every penny.
There's a lot.
Okay, then once we come back to the board, we'd have the qualifications, the qualities, and the characteristics after our meetings. We've talked about the advertising a little bit. Then the question is, do you want a citizens advisory screening committee? And in your packet, there's a summary of roles and responsibilities. We just put that in there for you to look at. And we did have one last time. The foundation was involved to some extent in that. And there's several ways of doing that. One way is that the board, each board member selects maybe 5 members and has a 25 member. If you want to go to 30, that's not a problem.
That's a lot. Is that a lot? That's
We're fine with working with 25 or 30. We work with pretty much whatever the board wants to do.
3.
Some boards Some boards identify community organizations that they want represented on it, and they, for example, the chamber, they would call the chamber and they'd say, send someone on the committee. Other boards just say, let's get our 5, and then we'll look at to make sure we have every organization represented, and if we don't, there's some we missed and we want to add more members. But that's long term.
So we should list the organizations
I like that.
we want represented and then go from there.
Right,
So
that's
how about everybody, I'm sorry, Kathy.
No, go ahead.
Everybody sends to Kathy organizations they want represented.
Organizations or names?
Organizations or names, but make sure if you put a name that the organization's with the name.
Oh, no.
and
Yeah.
you could have a parent. One of the
Let's say parents.
go ahead.
But one caution about this, you know, you say you want the XYZ company, and then the XYZ company president, who you would like someone at an executive level, says, oh, well, let's see if we can't get Joe Schmo over here in this department to go. So they're not putting any emphasis on that.
Correct.
Does Joe Schmo have an interest or any understanding of what we're trying to do? So we have to be kind of
That's a good
careful of
point.
We
that.
have to make
Because I've had
sure.
people who've called me already about
too.
this and want to be involved. And I think we have to be a little cautious about
It's
it. Bill?
5 is a lot. That's a big committee. What was it last time?
About 25.
It was the whole 315 room.
Yeah.
They would,
We can we deal with any size. I mean, that really 25 or 30 is not a problem for us. The other thing you'll have to decide. I think it's almost a little too early to get a list of names of individuals. Organizations might be good because this is a sunshine committee. And what happens is, Mr. Hardy was there last time. I mean, there's some really tight guidelines. We have him talk a little bit about what sunshine is and what not, and who they can talk to. But it's not too early to start at least making sure you have what organizations you like represented on it, and then you can decide. The other thing you need to decide is if you want us to facilitate it or you want to appoint a chairman. We certainly have no problem doing it. You may want us to run the meeting. But
I was in the meeting last time, and you did a good job.
Yeah, I think you should run the meeting.
okay.
I'd prefer you guys.
I was there, and you did a good job.
Well, thank you. Okay, so we're fine to do that also. So, anyway, that's something I'm hearing that we might want a citizens advisory committee, and then the interview schedule comes up, and then the other areas, the citizens committee. Whether you want to identify semifinalist or finalist, I think in this search, I'm going to recommend you identify semifinalists because you're going to have a very strong group. And then one thing we really try to emphasize, though, is that the school board makes the final decision. The school board is empowered because we've had, and they've not always been in our searches, but if you've followed some of these other searches, sometimes internal groups in the community come forward, and they kind of do their own rankings and rulings. If there's internal groups that want to get involved in the process, please let us know up front, and we'll have a focus group for them and get them involved. We want as much involvement as we can, but the board you have to make the final decision.
Yep.
So we just asked that.
With that, and so just to clarify, and how we did it last time, as I recall, was we had the community forum go through the 49 to provide semifinalists then came to us, and obviously we could bring anyone forward if it wasn't on that.
Absolutely.
I remember,
Absolutely.
but that didn't necessarily happen. Then we did a tally, and one thing that I heard before, and I know Shirley and I kind of talked about the discussion of how to come to the final decision and. Doing the matrix, which I know we did publicly, and technically everything's public, even if we send it,
Correct.
what have you, but not necessarily seeing where other fellow board, like who's chosen what, sending something, ranking our, whether it be semifinalists or finalists, to you beforehand, and then seeing who bubbles up to the top. Do you know what I'm talking about? Instead of doing it in this meeting, can you give me some feedback on that?
There's pro and con. First of all, the last time, I don't recall if we were specifically, and Andrea would be the person I would have to ask. I'm not sure if we were asked who our recommendations were. Okay, we are open. If we're not asked, we're not going to give recommendations. If you ask us our recommendations, we'll give you the recommendations because we do a lot of research on these people and we know that. Okay.
They're a private conversation.
So if you want those recommendations, we'll do that. there's pro and con on ranking, and I think you could look at one of the recent searches. When people rank, if sometimes people would get a low ranking, if we say and then they don't have enough points, and it's possible that the person that has number 2 has the most points.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that, and then it puts the whole process in kind of in a bind. So be thinking about that, and we'll talk more about that to you. But we've seen that actually happen.
Wait, explain that to me.
Okay, if everybody is ranking candidates, I want your top. If there's 5 semifinalists or 8, let's say usually it's semifinalists that happen.
My number 1 you can mark as 3, but we all pick the same number 2. So the number 2 person could be the same.
Right. So the person that has.
Number 1, 3, 3, 3.
Yeah. Okay.
And then 2, 2, 2, 2, 2.
Yeah, and Ms. Corcoran can come up with. We've not had that happen in our searches because we don't recommend it.
To me,
You know,
search.
Okay, well, you know what I'm talking about.
Terrible.
An RFP.
Yeah. So I wouldn't want that to happen.
So compared to what we did last time, we would not do it that way. You're saying?
Well, we would do it the same way because last time we didn't rank them. You just decided we heard the conversation from everybody, and someone made a motion and second, and we went back. We did 2 rounds. Normally we'll do 2 rounds. Every board member talks about all the candidates, and then we.
But it wasn't a back and forth discussion.
Well, that's on the final day.
Right,
That's the
we can tailor that so it's different. We're not going to probably recommend a ranking unless the board wants to. I'm here.
Well, one thing I would like to see is, okay, here's one of the qualifications we said. We said this is somebody who has a good business background, understands that this is somebody who has a good educational background, and so we actually say, okay, this is what I want. Oh, but when this one is good with the community because they live here, they know this, so. I didn't like the way we did it last time at all.
The final one. There was
final one.
discussion. There was discussion, decision. There was no
At a workshop.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you understand
Yeah,
what
we will definitely fine tune that process, and so everybody is well satisfied the way it goes. Will go for that last time.
I want to ask: would it be possible so that on June 2nd we say, okay, these are our 3 finalists. Can you set up, interviews like July 11th to the 12th? That's a Thursday and a Friday. And then on the Tuesday of the 16th, our meeting on the 16th, we make the decision. Because truly, we don't meet again from the 16th until July 14th. So if we could make that decision on the 16th and then work with the contract.
Well, we haven't set that final date, and that's where we're getting down. And my time is approaching the end. I've kind of given you an overview.
Good. We're having lunch in here. We have at 2:00, so you're okay.
Okay, good. I don't want to.
You got like 15 minutes where we can still survive.
You'll have to decide on the date that you want to select the superintendent to start. And I obviously I like to work with you all, and but there has to be a time when you select the superintendent. I mean, I don't have any time limit myself personally, so I work for Andrea. So thank you.
They don't know when they're going to start.
But we've got to have that. So at some point we need that data, and I know Mr. Hardy would like to get that too.
So what I'm thinking about, Bill, is that we really begin our budgeting July, right? Or we don't.
Your new budget year, but we don't have
Our year begins July 1. So, if we could possibly have someone by then, which I'm not sure we can with this timeline, but that would be at least a target date to look forward to, because Mitzi and I have talked about this. And it's only so long we can keep Mitzi from doing 2 jobs. She doesn't, so.
Well, we need a date, whatever the date is, to put in the contract.
Right.
So that was where I was like, I don't recall, did we have an end date before? It makes
honestly
sense
don't remember.
that you're not saying, hey, we're gonna agree to this amount in perpetuity, right? So we need a year and a half.
Even if we're going to do it July 1st, we should have some date beyond July 1st
And I'm fine. We're fine
Agreed.
with that. We're fine with that. Just give us a date.
to protect the district.
Right.
September 1st.
So July 31st or
1.
July 1?
That's not giving him.
That's the same date.
Well, you want to,
September 1st.
The date, it goes both ways. I mean, on one hand, they obviously need a date, which I appreciate, but you need them to have a date too, just like we talked about with Kroll.
That's right.
So that they have to make sure you make a decision, but you have to make sure they're doing the work.
But we're going to give them a timeline. The timeline could say July 1.
September 1st.
But the contract has a different date.
That's fine.
Yeah, you want a little flexibility because something could happen, in a month that puts things off for a little bit. So if your goal,
I do not want that.
If your goal is July 1st and you put a date in of September 1st, then you're probably
Covered.
That doesn't mean it has to be on September 1st.
No, but it
means
gives
has
us
to
an
be before
extended
September.
flexibility. So September 1st would be my.
On July
First to be done, but if we don't.
No.
Well, I go back to again and on June 3rd, if we can select our finalists and interview them June 11th to the 12th and vote on them June 16th.
May I give a?
Yeah, I don't think you guys are getting the point. The point isn't when are we going to pick a new superintendent. That's not the issue.
That's what she's talking about.
Right, but that's not what Art's talking about.
We're talking about in the contract, giving us flexibility.
The contract says, right now, it said July 1 or when the superintendent is selected if earlier.
If earlier.
I thought we were doing the
Right, if earlier.
superintendent
So
contract.
No. Now we're talking about the contract with FSBA. So we could still have some little bit of a date later than July 1 so that you have some.
We could do a timeline that said
room.
May 1st and have the contract say September 1st. We could do a timeline that says May 15th and still have.
Well, they're going to do things after we pick the superintendent too. So so let's
September 1st, yeah.
Well, why not August 31st?
Well, it was just the language that's in there. So it would be the contract ends September 1st, or if a
Or when the
superintendent is selected.
Which exactly, that's what I'm saying. Just
that's
change
what
to
it said.
September 1st.
Right. So
Or
am I
the
hearing
selection.
September 1st?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jane, Shirley,
And the only other thing, and the reason I wanted to add that is
September
if you
1st.
think of what happened in the past using anecdotal when there is someone who, things do change where you could have 3 applicants and someone's gone, and then, there are things that do fluctuate the time, and so this gives us a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And
It gives you flexibility, but it absolutely in
Doesn't
no way
change.
precludes you from doing things in June.
Right.
no, which
Well, I think we ought to do it August 31st. I think that just moves it up a little. And,
Oh
and,
my
you know,
gosh. Jeez.
What time? What time? Before noon or after noon?
11:59
p.m.
I'm saying
and
12:01.
I really don't care. You know what? And fine.
I meant AM, PM.
If you know what, if it makes the August 31st is fine with me. If that's
She's kidding.
have what
I'm
you
in the
need.
art of comp.
I'm fine, I do. Now, let me talk about a next step.
Okay.
Okay, and then,
We were doing so well, unanimously agreeing earlier.
I think we reached August 31st.
We got through the most of it.
Right. And I think that's good because if we're helping with the contract or doing protocol work with you or something like that, then that'll be good. Okay, when I looked at your calendar, I've tried to work around spring break, but and I liked, and then graduations are May 22nd through 23rd. I looked at that, so we'll avoid those. But we could do interviewing in June. We could do everything by July 1st and in the order that you want.
As long as it gets done right.
Right, as long as it's done right, and we'll do that. I think we can do that. Our advertising would probably be about 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks or something. But what I'm going to do is this. Based on all our conversation today, I'm going to try to put it all together and try to get it summarized, and I'll put something together for you for March 3rd. Okay?
So are we going to schedule an additional?
That's our next meeting. I think you have a...
Yes.
We have a board meeting, but perhaps either
Let's
we
start in-
work at the board meeting or we
No,
come
However you want to do it.
workshop.
We'll start earlier.
We'll do a work. We'll
What?
Have a workshop in the afternoon.
Well, we can't. We have an audit committee meeting that day.
Audit committee is 4 at 4.
At 3.
But
4? 4. 4. Okay, 4. But
I got it.
I'm just asking.
We can do it at 1.
Can I just ask, can we do it, can we add it on to the end of the board meeting? Because I don't plan on going to work after the meeting, and so I get the calendar dates for the year, and in the times during this time period, I have appointments up the yin, and I already have appointments all the way up till, I must have my last appointment must be 3, that's why I was thinking 3. But I already have client appointments because I was given a calendar of when we were going to be meeting, and so I have booked those days.
But Eric-
So all I'm asking is it possible instead of adding it on before the meeting, can we add the time on after the meeting?
The reason I did the audit committee at 4 was because of you.
Right, and I'm going to be there, but then
No,
bringing
no.
it back to 1,
But there's some times when you're going to have to adjust.
I understand, and so all I'm asking is, I'm saying we could still do it that day. All I'm asking is, can we add the time on at the end of the meeting instead of at the beginning? Right, add the time on to the after the meeting instead of adding the time on before the meeting. I'm just
Remember,
asking
you
for
have staff-
accommodation.
You have staff that have
I'm
to
asking for an
stay.
accommodation.
Eric, you have staff that has to stay. I mean, our meeting starts at 6:30. If we're lucky, we're out by 8:30. That's a long day. That is a long day.
Well, I want to be involved in the superintendent search, and if you create situations where I cannot be involved in the superintendent search, I don't think that's right either.
No, but
She's on it too, on the audit committee.
I'm not talking about the.
it's because I don't have a job. He's got a job.
I didn't
So-
say that.
But that is it.
Well,
you're
no, is
working.
there any way?
No, because in any other time besides any other time besides
Another day. I'll work.
any other time besides these couple months, if it was June, July, August, September, October, November, December, I wouldn't be having this issue. So no, Ms. Zucker, you're incorrect in your assumption. This time period on my calendar is booked solid.
The problem between
Okay.
5:30 and
That's what I
6:30 is
that's not-
getting it on. We'd probably have to
What
do
you
it up
heard.
there.
No, you said, and I quote, it's because you have a job and I do not, and that is not the reason why I said it.
Yeah, so.
That is what you said, and I did hear it.
So
Yes.
what I'm saying is, why don't we try to shoot for 5:30 to 6:30? It's just that the room will be set up like a traditional school board meeting, so
That's
it won't
fine.
be like
That's
this.
fine. That's a good accommodation.
But if we
Thank
do
you.
that, then we can do, and you guys are just going to have to sneak a snack while you're eating and talking during the meeting, because
fine.
that will be your dinner time.
Candy's
kind of.
good.
So, yeah, or a sandwich or something.
Some
If
public
that-
subs in the
because I
back.
think that kind of, if we can, Dr. Vogel, you think we can get done in an hour to do
Well,
this piece?
what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to pull together as much as I can, give it to Ms. Corcoran and Ms. Zucker, but there may be some changes that you want. And also, like, we probably want to have someone start looking at the brochure, just at the format of it, and different things like that. But we'll move through it.
Oh, the brochure, I think.
But if I have something in there that you're not satisfied with, please don't. I'll just do my best, and I don't have any problem if you want to change
I
anything.
think the brochure.
So maybe the audit committee, I don't know, we don't have too much on the audit committee. Maybe that's
I'm
4
not
to
the chair.
5.
Huh?
Maybe that's 4 to 5, and then we can do
your
5
first
to
meeting.
6:30.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do it at 5.
At
4 to
5?
5. If you want to change the meeting to just an hour for audit committee, and then do this 5 to 6,
You can notice the workshop for 5 and
and start as it is.
start as soon as you can.
I don't envision the first meeting being long.
Yeah.
No, I don't either. That's why I'm thinking we can do it at 5.
Okay, fine.
All right, so then we will discuss with Ms. Messina changing the July 1 date to a September 1 date, get her to email me that, and we'll print it out, so it'll be
Have it today with 3.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it'll be the same contract with that 1 date change, so you've seen the contract.
Speaking of by 3,
Yes, we will also have the Kroll contract back. Phase 1 will be completed by March 31st. Phase 2, most of Phase 2, their part of it, the drafting and getting us everything, will be completed by May 15th. That means we have to do work after May 15th to review and send back our the last step is soliciting feedback and revision, so that'll be on us.
Yep.
But their part will be done by 5/15, and their Phase 3 training will be completed by the beginning of the 2021 school year.
That's
And
phenomenal.
price?
That's good.
It's the same. I was
okay.
told to get deadline.
No, no,
I got
that's
deadline.
I'm just asking. Yeah.
That was
Doesn't
the
hurt to ask.
value of the, yeah, thank you. That
Doesn't
was
hurt
great.
to ask.
So that has already been sent back. I got an email which I forwarded to Kathy, and she'll get those documents printed out, so you'll have those.
Really?
Again, they'll be the same. It'll just be those additional deadlines.
Speedy Gonzalez there.
Well, it was fortunate that happened to catch the man in his office. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can't believe all we were able to accomplish today. I think it's been really productive.
Just keep going.
On a roll. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
Work with
you,
all.
Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then, Madam Chair, I don't know what else you have to do, but before you conclude, we're going to recess, and I just want to make the announcement about that whenever you're ready to do that.
Okay, next is members' comments, and yes,
What were we gonna say? So I think the past couple of months, we've been working well together, and I can only speak for myself. I've tried to be more cooperative, and I think one sign was today, and another sign was at the last meeting where I, who typically do not make motions, made the motion for FSBA. I mean, Jane's up there. Make a motion. She's always on me all the time. And then Bridget seconded it. She does, when she's not kicking me. And so we had a celebration. We had something that could have been controversial, end up not being controversial, and end up being unanimous. But then the very next thing, Madam Chair, is you dressed down one of our fellow board members.
I didn't dress down one. You perceived it as one.
Yes, so
I didn't dress down one.
It was quite clear that you were referring to a particular person.
No, I wasn't.
Well, and so I think that you owe that person an apology.
No, I don't.
I think that if you want to show, you've interrupted me like 5 times over the course of this meeting today.
Well, you're attacking me right now.
No, ma'am. And I think that's 6 now. So
okay, let's keep it going.
See, and that's what I'm talking about.
See, I'm kidding with you, Eric. That's my way of trying to stop the harshness.
So all I'm saying is are we going to continue? We have a fork in the road. Either we can try to continue working together, or dress people down. And so I think that you can show that indication. If you did not mean if you did not mean to dress down one particular person, then giving that person an apology should not be a problem, because you didn't mean to direct your comments to that board member. So apologizing to that person shouldn't be an issue. For you not to apologize to that person, especially now that you have said that you were not directing it towards that one person, that in and of itself sends a message of itself. And I do not think that message that you'd be sending if you didn't apologize to Ms. Ziegler is not a good message. And I've had many people come to me and interpret it that way. And so if you did not mean it that way, then a very simple thing would be for you to direct a comment to Ms. Ziegler and apologize and say that is not what you meant.
Can I speak?
Yes, and I hope it's an apology.
No, it isn't, because I did not address this to anyone. I really didn't. There's some things going on among the board that you are not always aware of, that I am. And it was meant for the board. It was not meant for one person. So therefore, I'm not going to apologize for something I didn't do. I won't. If I did it, I would apologize, but I didn't mean it for one person. Yes, Bridget.
Thank you. Well, thank you. And I was actually planning on addressing this as well, because I was taken aback on how many people in the community, a lot, and people that not are just sitting in my camp and supporting me, were very disturbed. And it's going back to the point of, are we going to put our best foot effort? And I think people have been really, really pleased with the way we've been working together. We've come through something really, really challenging. And I would hope that all 5 of us agree with that. And it was disappointing that when we have, and it wasn't just at the end of the meeting, it was done twice. And, I am actually very respectful of staff time. I don't abuse that at all. I don't want any of us to. And you can confirm that with many people where I've said, no, I don't want to go beyond it. And my biggest thing is making sure everyone has the right all the same information, so that not one board member, and that's been consistent across the board. I do think it was demeaning, and it wasn't the best way for us to handle ourselves, and I am disappointed. And I think that the outpour of And I was surprised because there are times where I feel like that behavior has happened in the past, but I think that people have wanted to see us move past that, and I think we have. And then that was a step back. And so I want, whether it was intended or not, and I don't, I think it's important that you be aware of it. But there are a lot of people internally at the district and externally at the district did absolutely see it that way.
Well, that's quite interesting because I've gotten many people that said thank you. Okay. So there's both out there. So to keep harmony, I will apologize to the board, not one person. I will apologize to the board for anything I might have said and try not to do it again.
And just to conclude, when it comes to asking for information that's on its own, like a random project, I would absolutely concur that we want to have the board support because you don't want one board member railroading it. However, if any board member needs information to substantiate an item that's been put before us to vote, I don't believe that that's something that would require a majority of if something is put in front of us to vote on and we need data to substantiate it, I believe that is our duty and responsibility. Is that something that we would all agree with?
When the board is published, it says if you have questions, contact this person. Uh-huh. So are we saying that we don't want them to contact that person if they have questions on an item? So if you have questions on an item and it says go to this person, when it is that is not beyond what we
No.
I don't expect that.
So nor have is that anything that's been abused? And again, like I said, if anything of those conversations was released, I've just requested that be fair given to all people, because sometimes we can't talk, and I don't want people to have information provided the day of. So to be fair, whether you want to read it or not, but I just wanted to be clear that especially if you're hearing thank you from people in the staff. Then I want to be clear publicly, it is our duty and responsibility to ask of those questions. So if that's something that's not being supported by members of staff, or they're disappointed that they're being asked questions, I want to make it clear publicly that is actually our responsibility.
You should, before we vote on anything, you should have the information.
Just wanted to clarify.
I think what I was addressing was excessive demands on staff for data.
For items that we are to vote on, yes, but for items that it's not arbitrarily asking for data that has no meaning. Do you understand my point?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I gotcha.
And I don't. If there is a member, and if there is an issue with that, again, it goes to what Mrs. Brown just said. Talking to the people who oversee that. Then I would hope that the superintendent would certainly let me know if there was anything that was in abundance. I'm a open book by all means and don't have an issue, so that was not communicated either. But it is our responsibility to be educated and have the documentation to support whatever votes we are being asked to do.
And on that same note, I think we have to be careful how we might address another board member record on social media too, and so we don't distort them or show that. Let's just not address what another board member does on social media.
Family.
Just for reposting somebody else's news article is not attacking a family versus you attacking me personally and mentioning my name in your response.
They called their wife a crook.
It was a news article that I hadn't even read every item, and you can't blame me for a news article. That was a news article that was printed. The article you put my name and said this. Let's just be careful what we say on social media.
Let's all apologize and move on. All right.
Did you just start saying kumbaya?
Want to say kumbaya? We'll lock arms. All right.
Are we ready to recess?
I would ask the board to recess and then reconvene in a litigation meeting at 2 to discuss the ESE case that is ongoing. Present at that meeting will be the board members, the superintendent, myself, and district counsel Kevin Penley, Keith Dubose, and the court reporter.
We will recess for a litigation meeting.
Beginning at 2.
Beginning at 2 o'clock.
Have a nice lunch.